Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Card Table, in which we discuss creation, practice, performance, and history with the greatest minds in Magic. Before we begin, I'm incredibly excited to let you know that this episode is now brought to you by MAGICBOX, one of the UK's leading bricks and mortar magic shops, and because of that you can grab yourself 10% off at their website with code PATCT. That's PATCT. More details later on in the episode. Enjoy. Today's guests are one of the UK's top magic double acts, taking their unique blend of comedy magic to theatres, luxury cruise ships, and festivals all around the world. And as regular performers at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, they have gained notoriety for their critically acclaimed shows such as Twin Possible and most recently Twin Feet, earning praise for their charm, quick-fire remarks, and of course dashingly good looks. It is the incredible Kane and Abel. How are we doing today, gents? Are we well?
Well, I've never been called had dashingly good looks as an adjective behind my name before, so that's very sweet of you, Corey.
I think he was talking about me when he said dashingly good looks. Because do you remember in the pre-show bit to this when he told us what he's looking at all the time? He was looking at my camera when he said dashingly good looks.
I feel like this is going to descend into chaos and carnage real quick.
That's a shame.
But it's going to be fun nonetheless. You're both dashingly handsome in your own ways.
But it's very clear which one of us has got a young baby. And,
is it the one with the forehead wrinkles?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the same face. Mine's just more weathered.
It's like now and 5 years' time. Oh, goodness. So we're going to jump straight into this before I slander you anymore. I butted you up and then brought you back down. That was a bit rough. We're going to hop straight back to your origin story, how this all came about. How did you guys get into Magic? How did it all start?
We went to play football, like most people that got into Magic. We went to play football at the field. I got kneed in the back by our older brother, he who shan't be named, and had to go to hospital to work out what was wrong with my back. And during that process, our granddad came to look after me and taught me magic tricks at my bedside. My darling brother, Kane, went to school, was told that your brother's really poorly, he might die. And he came back from school and I had magic powers and were doing all the tricks that granddad had taught me. We were 15 at that point, so we were also supposed to be revising for our GCSEs. But what we decided was a better use of our time was to read all the magic books our granddad had, and he also recorded like every magician that was ever on the telly. So we got hooked on Wayne Dobson's A Kind of Magic, and I remember, you know, it was the point in your life where you're allowed a little bit of freedom. So they're like, you've got some time at home. This is your revision time. And we just watched Wayne Dobson's A Kind of Magic and learned loads of magic tricks. And yeah, left school at 16 and put a little ad in the Yellow Pages because this is 22 years ago. And people rang up and wanted to book the magic act from the Yellow Pages. And we just started doing magic very, very early. And
I think that's kind of how we got into performing magic. But we've, as my brother mentioned, you know, it was our granddad that taught us magic. But we've been involved in magic our whole lives, really. But that was the sort of origin story of when we started performing it. But he was the president of the Shropshire Magic Society, and our nan was the secretary. And at the time, it was like a very successful society. They probably had like sort of 40 to 50 members that met every single Monday. They had good lectures. They would put on shows, you know, a few times a year. They'd have like family sort of like events in the summer and barbecues and things like that. They would have annual dinners that would have sort of, you know, like 250 people attend and things like that. So we always used to go to those events as kids, and we always watched a lot of magic. So we were involved in it. But for whatever reason, we just never really thought that we'd be able to perform magic per se. I think maybe we both kind of believed in it, and our granddad never showed us how anything worked. And yeah, then for whatever reason, he decided to to teach my brother a trick for the first time. And when I saw him do a trick, I was like, well, if he could do it, I could do it,
I mean, in all fairness,
one of the two.
the poor guy was on his deathbed, so he thought the secrets were going out anyway. He pulled through, and all of a sudden...
For sure, he probably thought he wasn't going to make it. Yeah.
So when you guys started back then, when you put your names in the Yellow Pages for the first time, was it under the branding Kane and Abel, or did that come at a later point? Did that come at an earlier point? And how did that name come about?
I don't think it was Kane and Abel, was it? It was
undisclosed real names.
It was more.
We always wanted a stage name.
So the stage name came about when we entered a competition, a Shropshire Magic Society competition, which had been won the previous year by Paul de Beck. So like a decent,
relatively high standards.
Relatively high standards. And, we were up with people like Steve Deller, I think, was in the competition as well. And then you had sort of older people like Paul Ray, who was the president of the IBM for a little bit of time, whose dad, Jeff Ray, was a huge influence on our career. And Paul was as well. Paul probably influenced my brother more, and Jeff probably influenced me from a sort of technical manipulation kind of point of view. But it was, and then their grandson, Jeff, who was a sort of, a decent magician for a while, but sort of fell out of it. And there was some like good quality magicians in it of all ages sort of thing. So we entered that competition, but we didn't really have a name. And another member of the society was like, well, what are you going to do? And we had a guillotine, which we've still got, which we never really do anymore. So we were just like, anarchic sort of teenage boys that had grown up watching Bottom and, were more influenced by Rick Mail than any kind of magicians at this point. So, we were just doing like silly, naughty, slightly violent kind of stuff, which ended with a guillotine. And this one chap was like, oh, like Kane and Abel. And we were like, yeah, whatever sort of thing. Didn't know who Kane and Abel were. There's no sort of religious background between us or anything like that. And when it got to entering the competition, my dear brother here decided to sort of go around Sainsbury's, and this was of a time where they used to hand out free samples. So he went around the store eating little free samples of things, and one of those things had perhaps been contaminated by someone else's hands, I would imagine, and he ended up getting quite the dicky tummy. So couldn't enter the competition, and the act was it was a black and white act where I dressed completely in black, my brother dressed completely in white, and we did basically the same act at the same time. So I would produce a black handkerchief, he would produce a white handkerchief, and then like a ball. So it was almost like a mirror image. The whole act was exactly the same. So there must have been I'm slightly confusing two different acts, but that was the act that we were going to do. But we must have been doing the thing with the guillotine somewhere else. So I turned up and we decided we were going to be called Kane and Abel. And they were like, what's your name? And I was like, don't know, Kane and Abel. And they were like, pick one. So I went, Kane. So I went on and did the act on my own, all in black with all the white props, because it still worked anyway. Under the name Kane, and won Best Newcomer. So it then got engraved on a trophy. So I then came home. He was, gabby in bed, which is probably, he's been on death's door twice already here. We're only 17.
I've not been well.
And it's continued like that for the last 20 years. So there's some great stories. And so I came home with this Best Newcomer trophy, and I was like, I won Best Newcomer, and you're now Abel. So that was how we chose the names, basically. But I can't remember the original name that was in the Yellow Pages. Can you remember it, bro?
I don't know. I think it would probably Kane and Abel, because I think we did come to it pretty soon. There was a short moment when we wanted to be called like, you wanted to be called like Ed Damassi, and I don't know what my name was, but it was definitely Italian as well.
I thought Damasi was a good name. I still do. It was, but it was completely stolen off the end credits of a computer game called Jack and Daxter: The Precursor's Legacy. Did you ever play it? Brilliant game. Brilliant game. So I would have been sort of, like 15 or 16 when I played that. And I can remember completing it and like reading all the credits, because you're like, something amazing is going to happen at the end. I'm going to get my free prize at the end of the credit. Make sure you watch the credits. There's tits at the end of it. That was the sort of the dream of a teenage gamer. And there was somebody called Ed Damassi, and I remember his name coming up, and I thought, that sounds cooler than my name. So yeah, I was going to call myself Damassi. Were you Gonzalez? Were we Damassi and Gonzalez?
Yeah, it was.
I think we were, weren't we?
No way.
Yeah, Lorenzo Gonzalez. That was going to be my name. I think we just never.
We didn't think people would know we were brothers straight away, so we thought we could sort of have another kind of dynamic other than, because at the time we looked a lot more similar than we do now. So, us coming on with two different surnames but looking identical was probably pretty meta for Shropshire Farmers, which is who we were performing to at that time. Exclusively.
But yeah, I think by the time we might have done some gigs under other names, but by the time we, put it in the yellow pages, we would have been Kane and Abel, definitely.
So in another world, there may not have been this brotherly duo. It would have been the Italian Mario and Luigi, apparently.
Yeah, it's quite funny.
Totally different.
We definitely had a point, and I think it was potentially when because we did about 10, I guess we did maybe like 10 years or whatever, doing maybe like 7 years, I don't know, doing shows around Shropshire, but then also we had these other jobs and we were living at home with mum and dad, so there was no real pressure on. And then my brother went traveling and I went to uni, and then we sort of both ended up in London, and we were like, let's really try and get magic off the ground. And that's when we started kind of performing maybe in sort of cooler places, I guess. And I remember there was a point when I was like, is it a bit corny and a bit cheesy being called Kane and Abel? But I think I like it. I like that we're not just called our normal names. And, I guess most people just go by their normal name. And I think that is cool. But I think everyone used to have stage names back in the day. And I think we are kind of throwbacks to a certain extent, and we are, from having all these old VHS tapes of magicians, we are as inspired by the past as we are by the future. And I think all those kind of, I've said Wayne Dobson's a big inspiration. That's his normal name, I think. But, there were lots of people who we would watch, and they very much definitely had a stage name. And I think we just always thought we need a stage name, and I think at 16, 17, when we were performing, even though it was just a name, it gave us a slight different persona. And that prevented us being these we weren't sort of awkward teenagers. We were really like in your face. Yeah. And we were coming, we were getting wheeled out at medieval fairs. And he was cutting my head off, so it was quite easy to be like, we're Kane and Abel, up yours.
As opposed to and now coming onto the stage, we've got Gina's boys, Eddie and Lauren.
From the continent, Damassi and Gonzalez. So yeah, I think just having that name kind of helped. And now, you get booked, and you mentioned in your intro, we've done Edinburgh for a lot of probably a decade now. We've been doing ships for quite a while, and people are like, "Oh, Kane and Abel." They remember the name. They don't know who's who, and that's fine.
I don't know who's who.
But yeah.
I mean, at the start of this podcast, before we were recording, the frames were the other way around, so we could have confused people even more. But we fixed that.
We stand on the wrong side for some people, you know, and that's
we stand on the side so that we can remember which one's which, you know.
Stage left, stage right, Kane and Abel.
Yeah. It's for our point of view.
Yeah. You get people sometimes who'll walk out from your Edinburgh show, like at the end, and they're like, lovely show. Have you ever thought about standing on the other side? It's like, have you ever thought about shutting the fuck up?
No, because the choreo only works this way, because I've got a gimmick in this side of my jacket.
Yeah, it's funny old game.
But who knows? We might have got switched up in that time, you know. I often think that, you know, obviously you get named as a baby when you're very young. There's a really good chance our mum and dad got us swapped around at some point, you know. I could have started off as Lawrence and now I'm Ed. I could have gone back to Lawrence and now I'm Ed again. You can't keep track of those little guys.
Just mix it up, why not?
Which one's which? It doesn't matter. Ed and Lawrence, that's who they are.
Did you guys ever play on being twins as a kid, just in messing with people?
We have, like most people, two grandmothers. One is a magical lady who is still with us. Pretty glamorous, you know, in her day, and you know, was always in magic. And she's our mum's mum. And then our dad's parents are from the South Coast. And sort of, I think there was very much, you know, if you saw the two sets of grandparents, you would know which one was from rural Shropshire and which one was from the
Yeah.
You know, she gave slight keeping up appearances vibes, you know. I can remember once someone put a packet of butter on the table and she shrieked, you know, because the butter dish is there for a reason, guys. So we didn't used to see our other grandmother that much because she lived on the South Coast. So we still thought she didn't really know which one was which. So we used to do a lot of swapping around, like we would go out of the room, change clothes, come back in, sit in each other's chairs. And we thought that she had no idea that we were fooling her. But I think we probably didn't give her enough credit for that. She actually did probably play along, and she probably had a little bit more fun to her than we thought. She was very much the serious grandmother of the two.
Yeah, we thought she was an idiot and didn't know that we were like different people, but actually she just played the straight guy to perfection and to pure dedication until the end of days, you know?
And she never got the credit she deserved.
She didn't, but now she gets it.
This is a post-Hermosis battle.
This is what this podcast's for, leaving legacies. At what point in your guys' career then did you, obviously you mentioned you had different jobs. Obviously I know a little bit about your background, having worked with you guys in the past. At what point did you guys stop those normal jobs and say, look, we're gonna really push this?
It was
Edinburgh was the sort of, so we were working in London. I was doing a job that I enjoyed, but you know, I was a chef, so I was working at the Ivy in the West End, which I know a lot of magicians will know. You know, quite a decent restaurant, but 16-hour days sort of thing. And then on my days off, we would go and do magic shows together. My brother very much had an office job, which I think he enjoyed, but it didn't really stimulate him much at all.
Yeah.
So, and I can remember going and doing like a black tie event on like a Thursday, you know, and I would have had to have booked the day off for it. And I can remember just thinking, I don't want to be here. You know, I'm not enjoying this sort of thing. And it's because I was, you know, working so much. So I came to the decision that one of the two things had to go, you know, and quitting catering and chefing was the easiest one, really. Well, the one I wanted to do was magic, and also you can pick that up and go back to it. But I think if you stop performing magic for any amount of time, you'll get really behind. So we made the decision that we would register a show for Edinburgh. We got booked for Glastonbury for the first time, and I can remember going to Glastonbury and then going back to work on the Wednesday, and I was like cleaning the inside of a bin. And I just thought I was a magician at Glastonbury last week, and now here I am. And originally I had booked a month off work to go up to Edinburgh to do the Fringe, and I was going to go back, but I just thought I can't do it. So I went up to the head chef and I went, "Chef, listen, I'm going to go to Edinburgh." I was like, "I think I need to be all in. Like, I don't think I should come back." And he was very supportive. He's a great guy, Gary Lee, who, really good chef. He'd give anyone a chance. And he'd been to our shows since, sort of thing. And he was very much like, "There's always a job here for you, but I agree, you should go. If you're going to do something, you've got to do it, all in, basically." So we agreed that we would both quit our jobs, go to Edinburgh. We would both be in the same boat, and we'd come back from Edinburgh and then have a real stab at it. But the little snake who is he on the left of me, Corey, or is he on the right of me as you're looking at us?
He is on your right.
The little snake on my right over here didn't quit his job. So he then did another year of office work until the following Edinburgh. And then he quit his job. And then since that point, we've both been full-time all in.
To put a timestamp on it, Corey, I think it was 2014 that we went up and did Edinburgh. And that was the same year, I think, we did Glastonbury for the first time. So things were kicking off for us.
Was that also your first Edinburgh Fringe? Or have you done Edinburgh Fringe previously? Yeah.
We did the street.
Okay.
In maybe 2010, would you say?
It was before I went to uni. So it would have been 2008. It was 2008. We went and did the street shows up there because we'd done some street shows in Shropshire, or what we thought were street shows. We did some shows outdoor in Shropshire at events that were billed as street theatre day. And you turn up and the audience are already there. And the audience are going to stay there for the whole of the shows, and they watch all the shows. And at the end, you get
and you've already been paid.
You get paid by
a very unrealistic representation of a street show.
Yeah. So then we went up to Edinburgh.
We were well behind years, Corey, somewhat at this stage,
And that's the terms of which we knew street performing, and obviously it was very different. But we at that point, we just wanted to go, and we just, we were both living in Shropshire, and I think I was working in Burger King at that point to make a bit of extra cash. And we were just, it was just a fun thing that we went off and did. And it was really cool to see the festival. And it was fun. I think we learned a lot about the street performing world. Off the back of that, when we came down to London, the one thing that I always did when I had the job, actually, is I did street shows on my own. And it was a really cool time because I would go so I would do my 9 to 5. And then on the weekends, I would go into Covent Garden and I would do my shows and hang out with Magic Sam Hurst all day. And Kane would be working in the Ivy round the corner. And he would, if he was finishing at sort of, if you were doing a lunch service, he'd be finished at 3 or 4 or 5, whatever you tell me. But then he would come, and I'd done some street shows and we were hanging out with a lot of street performers. Paul DeBeck, again, who is a linchpin in our whole lives because he's probably our best mate. He was living in Covent Garden at that point. So we were hanging out with magicians. I was doing the street shows. We discovered that doing street shows as a duo is really difficult because you have to be so responsive to what's going on, and you have to really fly. You fly with what's happening. So bringing it back to the script is really, really difficult. So we've done street performing in Edinburgh, and I just felt like I really wanted to give it a bit more of a crack. So that time, sort of 2014, 2015, I was doing street shows, still doing the day job. And the really cool thing that happened in 2015, I think at the end, and I know I was definitely still in the office, but Kane wasn't, is we got booked to demonstrate the magic tricks for the Ellusionists when they were in the West End. And that was a really cool thing to do because they wanted one person and we were like, we'll do it. And it basically meant, yeah, we picked our shifts between the two of us.
Because there was a lot of shows. It was, 7 weeks, sometimes 3 shows a day sort of thing. So if it was just one person, you wouldn't have had a day off for 7 weeks. That was that is how the theatre works, isn't it? Yep. But it's not really how sort of magicians work. So it would have been a lot of hard work for, and it was like almost like doing close-up magic, it was like you were there demming these tricks, trying to sell floating cards. And we, and that was it. But it was great because we got to watch this magic show in the West End every single day. And it had, Jamie Raven had just done Britain's Got Talent. So he was kind of almost like the headliner. They'd sort of like slipped him in right near the end as the sort of relevant person. And Colin Cloud was on it, who was great to watch every day. David Williamson, Kevin James doing his sawing in half, Dang Dang, the manipulator, and Andrew Basso.
Was it Basso or was it the crossbow guy with the hair? Or was it both of them? The crossbow guy?
Well, they finished the first half with the water torture escape. And that was Andrew Basso, definitely.
Yeah.
So then I would sit there whilst people would people would sit there being like, this is too long, and it's a fine line between if you're going to escape from a water, you don't want to get straight out, do you? But also you don't want to be too long. So I think they had the right balance. So maybe there was another act. Was there a guy with a crossbow as well?
Yeah, there was a guy with a crossbow and long hair. I can't remember his name, but he was very good, and he did it with his wife. Do you remember his wife was there?
It wasn't Aaron Crow, was it?
It wasn't Aaron Crow. No. It wasn't Aaron Crow, but it was really good.
He did not have the hair.
Yeah, but it was and it was another thing that happened when we were, really trying to go from these other jobs to magic. That was just a reminder that we've really got to keep pumping everything into it, because we'd had Glastonbury, what an amazing opportunity. We'd had Edinburgh, what an amazing opportunity, which had gone well. And then we were part of the Ellusionists, and you just saw, every magician went to the Ellusionists and sat there and thought, I want to be a cog in this machine, So, and I think it was really good for us to see that, because everybody has a moniker in that, right? And I think when they started the Ellusionists, I think people had the monikers, but they, the characters weren't maybe as defined, but they got more and more defined as it went on. And I think off the back of that, if you look at Edinburgh this year, everyone is something. And I think it's because everyone saw it and thought, being a magician will not do. So you have to be the rock star magician, or the vampire magician, or the witch magician with a split personality, or the twin magicians, whatever. And I actually think a lot of what makes British magic, and magic all over the world, but the British magic scene is so interesting at the moment, is everybody has thought, what is my box that I fit in? What's my character? And I think that all comes back from the Ellusionist, which is a really, really long way to say 2014. My brother went full-time, and I went full-time after Edinburgh 2015. And those were some of the things along the way that helped us to go full-time with magic.
That's a pretty wild start to anyone's magic career. So,
but we were 10 years in at that point, Corey.
Oh, there you go.
We'd been doing festivals and fetes and birthday parties and all these things in Shropshire and Mid Wales for like a decade. So, you know, I think we've always been sort of grizzled young veterans, really. It is the best way to describe us. And we still kind of are, you know, people are surprised that we're 38. Some people won't be, but a lot of people, you know, when they go, when
I'm surprised that I'm 38.
Yeah. You know, people will say, when did you do your first show? And we go 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been it was probably a good, you know, a decade. I think we probably did our first show 2003, 2004. And then it was a whole 12 years until we were able to make it full time. And we're just keeping our head above the water ever since, really.
Incredible. Well, you guys are absolutely hitting it, if you pardon the pun. So it's definitely gone well. We're going to hop into our quickfire section because that brief introduction was not as brief as it normally is, which is good.
We're wafflers.
I do like
we'll waffle.
I do like a long backstory. It's nice to get all of the fun bits and pieces.
I hope everyone's enjoying this 4-part special of the Kane and Abel interview.
We're in for the longest episode yet, people. Buckle in. The first question in our quickfire segment is, what is your favourite sleight? Obviously, you can answer this individually if you both happen to have one. Also, this doesn't necessarily have to be a card sleight. Most people assume that this directly means card sleights. This could be any type of sleight.
I'm going to do mine super quick because Kane is the more dexterous and does the most sleight of hand out of the two of us, so he will have more answers. I love palming cards off the top of the deck. And if you said...
That surprises me because you don't do it very well.
If someone thrust a deck of cards into my hand and said, do a trick, I do cards across. And a section of that cards across trick means you have to palm however many cards of the number they've just said off the top of the deck. So, and then you get to sneak it somewhere else. And in years of doing that trick, I've never been caught palming 7, 8, or 9 cards off the top of the deck. I have been caught once or twice sneaking them onto the other packet. But I think it's really fun. And also, you know, when you pull all the cards out your mouth?
Yeah.
You've obviously just got some cards palmed in your mouth and you pull it out. And I think that's one of the funnest things to do. So I'm just going to say that. That's me.
Do you have a particular palm that you go to? It's not like one-handed top palm, or is there anything in particular, or just generally palming?
I think a one-handed top palm is the thing. Goodness, I don't know all the names. What are these? The jokers are on the top. I just do like that. Just get them all like that.
Seamless.
Just like
Perfect.
That. Ow. Yeah, and then obviously there they are. What's more fun than that? I mean, come on. Like we can talk about magic as much as we like, and you know what's clever and what's smart. But if you ask me, there's nothing more fun than that or doing an appearing Kane. Kane, you want to talk about the PATCT turnover force?
The Larry Jennings pull down.
Go on. Give us a bit of Larry Jennings pull down.
Yeah, I do quite like the Larry Jennings pull down. It's fun to do and it's fun to say. My favourite sort of sleight is probably a back palm. You know, it's probably like classic sort of manipulation. That's the type of magic that I got into early doors. I was very sort of influenced by Jeff Ray, who have you heard of Jeff Ray, Corey? I know he's he's probably in his 90s now, but sort of anyone I guess older than me and my brother will know of Jeff. He was, you know, like manipulation champion at all of the sort of conventions in the 70s, and you know, did sort of live at the Palladium and things like that, and had a dove act. And I can remember watching him do doves as a child, sort of thing. And I've never learned how to do dove manipulation, but that's probably my favourite sleight to watch. You know, like it's real magic. Like producing a a playing card is fantastic, and it's my favorite sleight to do, and it's still what I practice just for fun. You know, we've never really had. I do ball manipulation sometimes in our show, but card manipulation we've never really managed to put on stage. So it's the one thing that I just do for enjoyment. You know, I've always got manipulation cards close to hand, and it's the one thing that I do just practice and practice and practice all the time. But I think it's quite beautiful to have something that you practice that you're never going to put on stage. You know, it doesn't have to go onto the stage.
To be fair, I think most people's answers when I ask that question are moves and sleights that they've learned but don't actually regularly perform, like diagonal palm shift and
you know, like
and all sorts of other stuff.
The most useful shift, I think, to any working magician that does like close up is a double lift. You know, that's the most useful. If someone went, we're going to get rid of a sleight, and it's never going to exist ever again. You can only keep one thing. What are you going to keep? You're going to keep a double lift, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really.
Yet nobody names it as their favourite, strangely enough.
Really?
I don't think we've had a single double lift yet. I'm currently tracking all of the actual numbers on people's answers for influencers, favourite sleights, and a few other things. So at the end of the year, I can culminate and see which ones have been the most popular and all of that. So I don't believe double lift's been on there.
Has anybody else said a top palm?
I believe they have.
Or as I like to call it, the Kellogg's cornflake at the magic side.
I can tell you exactly what's in the top if you give a few seconds. It's actually quite an interesting read. Or at least I think it is.
No, I
Nobody
think
else cares.
Go for it. I mean, maybe if you name the magician, shall we try guess what the sleight is?
That would be a really fun game. I might do like a Christmas quiz special.
Yeah.
We just get a few guests on and ask people.
If you did a Zoom Christmas quiz like it was the Troubles again, I'd join for that. I mean, that sounds
that'd be really fun, actually. I am going to make a note of that because we're going to do it. The top answers thus far are Acitus Novus, which is obviously the mentalist, diagonal palm shift, and billet switches, which again is probably, and one-handed top palm. Actually,
I love a bill switch, and at some point during this conversation, we would always sort of gone on to that. At one point in my career, I went off to America and worked at a summer camp on my own, which was in upstate New York and was absolutely fantastic. And you basically do sort of, I was there for 9 weeks, and this is something that any young magician, if you've got the opportunity to go and do, I would highly recommend, because it still happens, I'm sure. And you basically go away for 9 weeks and you do 5 or 6 lessons a day, every day for 9 weeks. And in that lesson, I used to do a sort of 15-minute show, and then I would teach them how one of the tricks worked. And I had and the kids would come back and they'd be somewhere between the ages of 8 and 16. So you don't know what you would get. Sometimes you would get 8, 16-year-old girls coming to your class, and sometimes you'd have 8-year-old boys, you know, and somewhere in between. But they would come in their age groups with a sort of general counselor who is generally someone that's training to be a teacher at home. And then you have a specialist, which is what I was. So you just stay in your classroom and they come to you. But it was brilliant because I just got to perform continuously over and over and over and over again. But my thing that I used to do to get drinks in bars was the bill switch. You know, I always had a thumb tip in my pocket, and
that's the method. We don't divulge methods on this, but we're handling all the front and center today.
TT in my pocket.
TT.
A little TT in my pocket. And I would just, people are like, oh, I hear you're a magician. And I'd be like, well, have you got you got any cash on you? And it's America, so everybody had, and this is when all money was paper anyway, but everyone had, everyone's like, oh, here's $1, and I'd turn it into whatever. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And then I change it back, and then they go, would you like a drink? And I go, yes, please, I'll have a beer, and that was what I did for 9 weeks. And then I traveled around America for a little bit afterwards and continued to do the same thing. And it was one of my sort of heroes is Lance Burton, and when I got offered my contract, it was from like sort of, let's say, June till the middle of October or something like that. It was like a 9-week thing. And I can remember going on Magic Week, like on the same day that I accepted my contract to go to New York and work in this summer camp. And I went on Magic Week, and it was announced that Lance Burton was retiring. And his final week in Las Vegas was the week after my contract ended. Yeah, so I was like, I can actually go and watch Lance Burton. And this is before people kind of went on the internet and did things. So I got a mega bus from New York to Washington, and then I flew to Las Vegas without a ticket to go and watch the show. And then I got in late and the theatre was closed. And then I can remember going back to my hotel, which wasn't on the Strip, because I didn't have a lot of money. And I can remember I said, oh, when does the box office open? And they were like 7 a.m. So I then obviously went out, had a few beers. I was 21. I could drink in America at this age. And I can remember waking up at like 6 a.m. and getting a bus from my hotel down to the theatre to buy a ticket, and going up to the box office and being like, have you got any tickets for tonight? And they were like, yeah, there's a few, sort of thing. So I bought 2, one for me and one for my friend Mark, who was a Dutch guy who didn't know magic at all, but he was like the sort of outdoor adventures teacher at the camp. So he taught them how to make fire and stuff like that. But he was like a sort of quite a normal kind of Dutch man. Didn't know, and he knew who Hans Klok was, So
it's like all normal Dutchmen.
yeah. He's a household name. So he knew who Hans Klok was, and I was like, he's better than Hans Klok. So I was like, do you want to come to this show with me? And he was like, who is he? I was like, he's better than Hans Klok. He was like, okay.
Hans, if you're listening to this is exclusively their opinion.
Well, it's how do you get a Dutch person to do anything? You say Hans Klok would do it, Hans Klok likes bananas,
Marco Babars will be there, I hear.
Yeah. So my way of getting him to the show was being like, if you like Hans Klok, you like Lance Burton, So my friend Mark came with me, having never seen Lance Burton or anything like that, and he walks on, and he looks like great and elegant, and he takes the gloves off and he throws the glove out and it turns into the dove and flies back. And my friend Mark just looks at me and goes, so he's pretty good, yeah?
Do you guys have a particular favorite plot in Magic?
I mean, there's so many, but I think, well, I tell you what, actually, because thinking of slights and that, you name something that you don't do. This is a plot that we used to do when we started, and we haven't sort of gone back and done it for a while. And I think we're always discussing getting it back in the show. Is essentially the plot of the McCool card trick. You know that Billy McCool. It's you show a prediction. Let's say it's the King of Hearts, and you put it in a little frame, and then everybody's seen that in the audience. And then you've got the person up with you and you say, this person's going to pick one of these cards. Okay. And then you show the cards, they'll be jumbo cards, and they're all the prediction. So everyone's, and the audience are in on it. They're all the prediction. He's going to pick it. It's going to be the King of Hearts or whatever. Your assistant picks your spectator picks the card. You ask them a few questions. It all seems like it's going well. And then at the end, you ask them a question and it becomes very obvious that it can't be the prediction card. And then you ask them and they go, it's the two of diamonds. And you're like, can't be the two of diamonds. They were all the king. And then you get your king out and you turn it around and it's the two of diamonds. We used to do it when we first started doing magic, a practical magic version where they were all chickens. And the big reveal was that they picked an aeroplane. And then you turn it around. I just think it's a very nice plot of a trick. I could talk about anything in our show that I like, but that's something we're not currently doing. And I think it's a really cool sort of plot.
Yeah, I mean, that was something we did a lot in our sort of kid show days. You know, we used to do a lot of kids magic, family magic. We used to do birthday parties. We haven't done them for a long time. I think we
back when you were still doing the anarchistic, macabre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly the same. And a lot of the material was sort of, you know, in both shows. But I can, and to be honest, I still don't mind the idea of a magician at maybe a birthday party at a house where the kids are relatively well behaved and the parents are into it, and there might be, let's say, 10 to 15 of them. You know, we did a lot of shows like that that we really enjoyed, you know, and they're captive and they're into it. And it's a lot of the time, it's the first time anyone's ever seen a magician. You know, you hear a lot of people, when you ask them, how did they get into magic? A lot of people will say, I saw a magician at my birthday party. Not so much now, but sort of our generation, that was when you first kind of saw magic. Now it's on YouTube or what have you. But, you know, for every one of those nice kids' birthday parties, there would be one in a village hall with 45 children and a kitchen at the back where the parents could hide and drink coffee. And you would do, you know, maybe some balloon modeling at the end, sort of thing. And I can remember doing those kind of shows and being like, this isn't what I'm in it for. It's not what I'm in the business for. Like, I'm in the business to do good shows. I'm not in the business just to be a sort of thing. Well, it's kind of like, if you go around to someone's house and do a kid's birthday party for 12 people, everybody cares if the cake tastes good, you know. But if you do a kid's birthday party in a village hall for 45 people, no one cares if the cake tastes good, you know. And I want to be the magician, you know, that is the cake that tastes good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which doesn't answer your question about favourite plot at all. That was just, you know, a little caveat on my brother's answer. But the sort of most interesting plot or narrative that we kind of dine out on really is if something were to happen to one person, then it should happen to the other one. And it's something that kind of only really we can do. Even, you know, double acts like, you know, Penn and Teller, who's probably the greatest double act, the greatest influence on us, sort of thing. They can't do the same material that we do, you know, because they don't have the relationship between them is that they're mates, I guess, and now they're people that have known each other for a long time. They're not really even mates on stage. I guess when they were younger, it might have been that they were mates, or they were two people that wanted to do a show together. For whatever reason, they wanted to be on stage together. They found each other interesting to be around. I guess that's kind of the Penn and Teller narrative, you know. Now they're just Penn and Teller. Yeah. But, you know, they couldn't come out and sort of, they don't have a connection, you know, whilst a lot of what we do and a lot of what I find interesting plot-wise is the connection between the two of us. And I think people are interested in twins and whether they can read each other's minds. And perhaps that's not my favorite plot, but it's one that describes what we do well and what is very easy for an audience to understand. So, you know, one of my favorite things that we do is our word on arm routine, where we have a word selected and my brother just writes it on his arm, like he's looking around for a notebook Oh, I'll write it on my arm. Is that the word? Is that the word, is it? And then, we mentioned that there's a connection between the two of us, and I light a match and hold it underneath his other hand. And then my hand starts to smoke. Smoke starts to come from my hand, and ash starts to fall from my hand. I rub that ash onto my arm, and then the same word is burnt into my arm. All right. Pretty cool thing that, we've done for lay people and magicians, and was a large part of our lecture for the IBM this year, because it's something that we find really interesting. And it's an interesting plot that whatever happens to one person can happen to the other one. But you can't really, for an audience, do that trick without doing something a bit more simpler for them to understand first. Yeah. So a little bit of mind reading, a little bit of, whatever he can see, I can see. Like we can read each other's minds, sort of thing. Something that the audience already know and understand. I think it's kind of like it's a voodoo routine, is the word on the arm.
Yeah.
But if you come out and go, is everybody familiar with a voodoo doll? It's kind of like, oh, this is a bit, you have to break them in. You have to bring them into your world gently, because our style of magic is quite dark, and particularly for, when we work on cruise ships, it's a family show. There's nothing too violent. We don't do our knife through arm routine, which is another great routine that we've got. But, they arrive expecting, they've probably all seen magicians before, and they might be expecting a certain type of thing. And we have to break the ice pretty early on to be like, this is going to be a bit dark, guys. This is going to be, when we were advertising our show on the streets in Edinburgh, handing out flyers, I would tell people it was like a sort of a Disney fantasy horror movie. Like it's not a horror movie, fantasy, nice word, Disney, nice word. But I think people understand, maybe a little bit like the Goosebumps. It's like sort of, it's mystical, it's magical, That's my idea of the word magic, is that it is a little bit, it's mystical, it's supernatural, basically, I think.
Perfect. What an answer.
What an answer to the question you didn't
ask. I've still got the data in front of us, and
you'll cut that down.
If anybody else is interested, object to impossible location is currently standing at the top, followed by prediction, confabulation, and PK touches. They are
object in impossible location is probably my least favorite plot in Magic.
Wow.
But we do it. But I think what I don't like about it is, and this isn't particularly naming sort of, I'm not going to like, I'm not actually thinking of any magicians in particular when I say that I don't like it. But I think
proceeds to detail a very specific object to impossible location routine.
No, because we do one. We do a routine that's basically came out of Ben and Neil's book, The Darkest Corner. Yeah. And I don't know if they call it glitter bomb in the book, but we've always referred to it as glitter bomb. And it's basically there's glitter in an envelope. It's five envelopes. One of them's got the glitter in. Find the glitter, guys. And, we've got a bit more of a story to it as to what the glitter is made up of. And I think one trick like that in a show is great. But I think a lot of the time, I've seen a lot of people and the whole show is, where's the thing? Find the object, and it's, I think that's when, that's why perhaps it's the one thing we do the least. And I think it's for that reason is that all magicians do it. So if people come and see us do, there's glitter in one of the envelopes, they've probably already seen someone do, there's a note in an envelope somewhere, let's find it. or there's a drink in a thing somewhere, let's find it, or there's a thing in a thing somewhere, let's find it. Like, I think audiences are used to it, not necessarily saying bored of it, but audiences are kind of, they're used to seeing it already. So the reason I say it's my least favorite is it's the one that I think is least interesting for the audiences to watch.
Personally, I quite like it. I think vanished object in impossible location. It's like the Kellogg's cornflakes of magic. And
but every magician's done a note in a note in fruit, you know. And I think because we do Edinburgh every year, it's the first time that people might be going and watching more than one magic show on a day. You know, some people might come and watch us and they'll go, oh, we saw Tom Bolton and we're going to Tom Brace later and we're seeing Ben later, you know. And if all four of you are doing, we've lost a thing, let's find it again, and now it's in a banana, it cheapens you and it cheapens all of you. So I think.
So now everyone get your calculators out.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
old chestnut.
Which is another trick that we do, you know. But I think that's a stronger thing than.
Yeah, that's the issue. Is it plays really well.
It's almost impossible for us to take out of our show, and we've tried replacing that trick with different tricks, but with the same narrative and the same script and the same storyline.
It's the same.
It doesn't hit the same, so you have to leave it in. And yes, you know, we do. There's a thing in an envelope somewhere, or there's a thing in a banana somewhere. But we will be very sort of selective of what environment we do that in. You know, we do note in banana when we do a lot of shows for. The only kids shows that we still do actually is we do a lot of like lottery funded workshops for kids in like half term and you know holidays, and they're usually, and it's just to give them something to do during the school holidays, and we do almost like a longer version of what I used to do at summer camp in America, in that we do a show, maybe 45 minutes, and then we will explain some of the tricks that we do in that show. And one of the routines that we do, and I love doing it in that environment, is noting banana. But it's an environment where no one's seen a magician before. Yeah. You know that they're not thinking the note's going to be in the banana. Because there's very rarely a wrinkle on where's the thing, you know. It might be a different thing inside a thing, but it's still a thing in a thing, you know. And I think usually in the environments we work in, there needs to be a wrinkle. There needs to be something other than us just telling you what we're going to do and then we're going to do it. But in certain environments, it's you can just do that. You can just go, the note's vanished. Where is it? You know. And they're into it, and I love performing it in that environment.
I'm gonna have to put on the show title for this: Kane and Abel and Banana, because that banana's made many an appearance over this episode thus far. And who knows, it may come back later. Maybe it's got a prediction inside.
Yeah, that'll be it. At the end of this, Kane will actually open the banana and reveal something's in it. And he actually does love the plot.
It's got all of the show questions without ever having read the show questions. Do you guys have a particular favourite book? I know, Lawrence, you are ahead of the game on this one, so we'll let you go first.
I'll try and do it as quickly as possible. Our granddad, something else he passed down to us was like 200 to 300 magic books. So I got two honourable mentions and then the number one. So if we're like, we need another 5 minutes, or we need 10 minutes, or we're writing a new show and we're looking for inspiration around tricks, the two books that I go to first are Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic because loads of things are in it and it's like nice and big and it's there. Next to that on the shelf, because it's the same size, I've got PATCT pages page by page, which is essentially a load of PATCT pages books merged together. Pat Page is such a cool guy, and we were so lucky to have sort of got into magic at the time that we saw Pat Page perform at Blackpool. We saw Billy McComb, who I mentioned earlier, perform at Blackpool, and they were such legends. And I think in a day and age where people will happily sell a single slide on a magic website for £35, to compare what Pat put into the magic world, which is just so much content and so many books. And the whole story everyone says is, if you bought a trick off Pat Page in Davenport or a convention, he wouldn't let you leave that stall until he knew you'd perfected how to sneak that pea under that walnut shell. So those are my two honourable mentions. But the top one for me, which I have brought with me because I'm in my house, is, and I think part of this is a book that not a lot of people know. It's Magic with Cards, 113, Easy to Master Miracles with an Ordinary Deck. It's by Garcia and Schindler. Now, I think part of what I like about this is it's got two minds have created it. I think the reason we're a double act really is because we find it a lot more interesting having that dynamic and having sometimes conflict, or sometimes someone says something funny and then the other one puts a little kicker on it. We like watching double acts, and we like work that's been created by more than one people. My brother mentioned, Ben Hart's book. That's not Ben Hart's book. It's Ben Hart and Neil Kelso's book. And what Neil has added to that book makes it really, really interesting, and we're really into collaboration on a whole. And this is a book that is created by two people collaborating together. It's also the first book my granddad gave me. So every time I look at it, it takes me back to that day. And it also has in here, my brother mentioned the word on the arm, which I think probably is our favorite trick that we perform at the minute because we put so much work into it. Well, the sort of basis of that is in this book. We've changed the whole method, because in this book, it says this is something that's perfect for small gatherings around the house. And Satan's ashes, as it was in here, when you have a card picked, burn, and you rub it on your hand, the method worked perfectly for 10 or 20 people around your house. It didn't work for playing to a room of 1,000 people, which is typically what we do on our ship shows. So, and yeah, that has come from that book. But what we've done, honestly, is we've spent 22 years perfecting it. And I think a year ago, we were still rubbing that ash on our arm and thinking, is this going to stick? Are they going to be able to see it? Now we're at a point that we can do that trick 45 minutes into a show under red hot lights when you've worn whatever you want, and everybody in a 1,000 seater theatre can see it. Yeah. That is just one of the 113 easy to master miracles with an ordinary deck that you could learn.
Available now at kaneandabel.com.
I love it.
Well, that book is actually completely out of print, so good luck to anyone that manages to get Magic with Cards by Garcia and Schindler. This is one of those rare moments, Corey, where I actually almost entirely agree with everything that my brother's just said. I think one of the most important books to me and apparently to both of us is Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic. And I think the reason for that is that, we weren't super academic, I can't even say the word.
Evidently.
We weren't super academic. We weren't sort of great at sort of reading at school. I was never into reading books at all. And I found Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic very easy to read, very easy to understand. There's a lot of pictures in it. And it also has a huge sort of wealth of different magic. Another one of my favorite books, which I'll mention quickly, is Card College by Roberto Gobbi. But that's the type of book that I found useful reading later on when I was like, okay, I want to learn some nice card close-up magic to put into this show. But the interesting thing about Mark Wilson's is it was a complete course in magic. So you could learn how an illusion was done, how some mentalism was done, how some close-up sort of sleight of hand magic was done, how sort of parlor magic was done. And I think that's actually had quite an influence on how we structure our shows, in that we like to have sort of tricks that all fall into almost different brackets. And I think that probably came from Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic. And Page by Pagey was another great one. That was the book that I learned my cups and balls routine out of. And I can remember in that book, he says every magician should learn the cups and balls. So I was like, okay, I'm going to learn it, you know. That was another great book. Another good book that's similar to Mark Wilson's, and this is a book that you could get in like the works, you know, it was on the high street at the time, was Nick Einhorn's book. And I can't remember what it was called, but Nick Einhorn, he wasn't really he'd done a little bit of TV maybe, but he wasn't a household name by any stretch of the imagination.
I think he got kicked out of Magic Circle for doing it. It might be the last time that, because it was released for the public. That was the thing. It wasn't released on Magic websites or whatever. Right. It was, as my brother said, in the works. And it was this big thing. I remember going to the Shropshire Magic Society and everyone's like, we've seen this magic book in the works. And it's not... Anyone can buy it. Anyone can buy it. But it was phenomenal.
It was very easy to, you know, we would have been sort of like maybe 16, you know, and we had all these sort of dusty old books that our granddad was giving us. And you would just look at it and you'd be like, this doesn't make sense, you know, and you can't actually buy a lot of the things that you need to turn all these liquids into whatever you want. It sounds cool, but you can't actually do that. You can't buy those things anymore. But the thing that was brilliant about Nick Einhorn's book was that there was a lot of pictures and it was really easy to understand, and it made magic more sort of approachable to anybody really. And yeah, that's had a real big influence on us. My favorite book is, and now maybe later, another book which is actually quite similar in some ways, in that there's a lot of really nice drawings, is Alan Wakelin's, what's it called? Might just be called The Magic of Alan Wakeling.
I mean, it might be.
I'll get it. Wait there.
It's in the other room. Whilst he does that, what I will just put as a little caveat, because we could talk about books forever, Corey, because we have so many and we are real advocates in them. The other thing, I'll answer this because we're talking about literature, is magic magazines. And look, I've got a Genie magazine just here. This is actually April's 2025 Genie magazine. There's an article in here written by me, all about street performing. But we have all the old linking rings that our granddad collected and passed down to us. We've got decades and decades worth of Genie magazines, and you flick them open and there's just unbelievable tricks in.
Absolutely cool. Yeah. We had an evening at the Newcastle Magic Circle a few months back where Martin Duffy brought in just a collection of magazines and we just had a flick through them, and there was some absolute gold in those books. It's ridiculous, the stuff that's in there.
I've got my book. I brought my book to show and tell. It's The Magic of Alan Wakeling, The Works of a Master Magician, and it's by Abel's good friend Jim Steinmeier.
Who edited, who is just getting to the end of his 12 months as editor of Genie magazine. If you haven't read Genie magazine for the past 12 months, phenomenal. Big Jim came in and he's completely revolutionized the mag. It's unbelievable. And I'm not just saying that because he paid me to write this article. But he's done a phenomenal year and he's passing it on to Will Houchin. Is that how I say his name?
No,
Houchin. Yeah. Will Houchin is taking it on, and I think he's going to do
you pleb.
Yeah, I think he's going to do just as good a job. So now's the time to read the Genie mag, I think, and there's amazing tricks in it. Who's the guy who Blake Voigt? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Blake Voigt does
Yeah.
he does a trick a month. Yeah, Blake Voigt. You get a trick a month by Blake Voigt.
Have you been watching Blake's series in which he does this? Yeah.
It's this Inventing Magic. Yeah. So he puts it on.
Sensational series. If anybody hasn't seen it, I'll link it in the show notes.
It was kind of what he did in. Did you see his lecture at Blackpool? He basically just tried to invent a magic trick over the hour. It was
really cool premise. I do not get to see anything at Blackpool because I'm normally working the MAGICBOX stand. Graham is a ruthless. No, I'm joking. Graham's
I can imagine.
So we do get off the stand, but not enough time to go enjoy lectures, unfortunately, which is even more frustrating having seen the lineup for next year because they just keep announcing more and more and more people, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've announced so many people that I'm holding off buying a ticket just in case they book Kane and Abel. But the other, whilst we're talking, can we still talk about books, Corey? Or we've got, is it?
I mean, we are currently 7.5 hours into recording, so why not?
I gotta take my missus to get her ears pierced. Come on, we gotta wrap this up.
The thing that people might find interesting in these books, and I didn't even know that this was in here, but it's in most books, is that there's a little note in here from our granddad.
No way.
And these are still in loads and loads of little books. And it's basically when he gave us these books, he would usually earmark one trick that he thought we could probably do. And he would write it down on a little bit of paper and he would write what page it was on and his sort of thoughts on how it could become a double act trick or something like that.
That's so cute.
So that's in there. So maybe we should put that in the next
I haven't got a note in mind. There probably was one, but I probably lost it.
But I think it's because you stole that book. And another book that I picked up, this is probably one of my favourite ones, and it's similar because it's also my favourite sleight is in here. And this is Routined Manipulation by Lewis Ganson. Anyone that... There's a lot of manipulation in this. Can you tell I like manipulation? But anyone that likes manipulation, there's probably people giving these books away for bugger all on secondhand magic. So look out for that. That's where you can get them from. Yeah. But it's a cracker. Routine manipulation. Lewis Ganson. Boom.
Do you have another question for us, Corey?
I don't know how I'm gonna fit all of these answers onto the lovely small square social media post that normally goes out to promote these episodes. Do you guys have a particular favorite performance in Magic? Whether this is something that you've seen live, something that you've seen on TV, do you have a particular favorite performance?
I think the easiest answer for me is because we've already talked about it. We've been really lucky to see some amazing Magic. So again, honourable mentions. We saw Wayne Dobson perform his full show when we were pretty new to Magic, and that was phenomenal. Ben Hart's a good mate, but I think all of his shows are amazing. And I remember was it called The Nutshell? What was it called? Yeah. The Nutshell. I remember sitting in that room for that and being like, you've created a completely unique world and I'm completely bought in. And we knew Ben at that point, but we weren't super mates with him at that point. So it was great to be able to still see it and not have known all the workings that he'd put into it. So it kind of went in more as a sort of audience member. That's phenomenal. Got to give little Ben an honourable mention for that. And I saw Chris Angel in Las Vegas this year, and I know Chris Angel gets a lot of flack. I don't know if it's because behind the scenes he rubs people up the wrong way. I don't know if it's because his bravado is rock star magician. But I like that. I don't want to go and watch Kiss and Gene Simmons to be all meek and go, it means so much that you're here, guys. I want him to be like, I'm a demon. I'm going to shoot fire out of my butthole, And Chris Angel, he's the proper rock star magician. His show in Vegas is phenomenal. I went with my mate who is not a magician, and we were lucky enough to see loads of unbelievable shows. together, and he was like, this is the best show I've ever seen because it's phenomenal. So that's my sort of current, like, at the moment, that's really, because I saw that in April. I think Chris Angel's Vegas show is amazing, and go and watch it, especially if you think, I don't know if I like Chris Angel, because you'll love it and it's really good. But honestly, I think that Illusionist show that we spoke about, I think, you know, that was put together by Simon Painter, who was a violinist, and thought there should be a big touring magic show that's all the best magicians in the world. And he put it together. And I think it's a real indication. I know you're going to ask about magic industry gripes, and this is probably jumping into that section, but I think as magicians, we all want to be front and center, and we want to, you know, promote ourselves and do our shows, and that is natural. There's no way we cannot do that. Kane and Abel have to focus on Kane and Abel and Kane and Abel's show, and making money and putting us out into the world. I think because Simon came into this as an outsider, he was just like, what are the moving parts that needs to be in this show for it to be phenomenal? And he wasn't thinking, well, I've liked this magician for 20 years, so I want him in. He was like, well, this guy does this and it's amazing. So he put it together. And I honestly think those shows, those touring Illusionist shows, and obviously we said we were in the 2015 one when it came back. By that point, Paul DeBeck was one of the cogs in the machine. And he was put into that, not because he had a social media presence, not because he had been on Britain's Got Talent or AGT. Paul DeBeck was put into that show because he was the best magician to be the trickster. And he was absolutely phenomenal and brought the house down. And he perfectly balanced and worked with everybody else in that show. So for Magic to have sat for, 90 minutes and watched a show, I'm not sure if much else really hits the heights. And I've seen David Blaine, I've seen, everybody, and they're all phenomenal. But what beats the Illusionists, honestly?
Well, let me tell you.
We've already heard about your visit to see Lance Burton in his last ever show in Vegas. I mean, nothing's going to beat that for you, Kane, surely.
Lance's Davac, saying that live, yeah, amazing. But and I think we've somewhat stumbled across a sort of a common theme here, that going to magic shows with lay people, is, I went to that Lance Burton show with a lay person, and probably another one of the best sort of magic performances I ever went to with a lay person. And that was Dominique de Vivier and Alexandra de Vivier in Le Double Fond in Paris. And this was another time that I was there with an old flame. And, we were walking around Paris doing Paris things. And I was like, this magic bar sort of thing. So again, I turned up without a ticket and sort of went up, and no one my French isn't particularly that great. I can say, can you speak English? So I sort of went up to the bar and I was like, does anyone speak English here, sort of thing? And they were like, oh, one person. And then they went and got Alexandria de Vivier, who was the only person that could speak English. And she came up and I was like, oh, I'm a magician from the UK and I'd love to be able to watch the show if it's possible. So she managed to sort of squeeze 2 extra seats in, and we went in and watched this show completely in French. But just the energy in the room. And obviously they do very sort of technical card magic. But just the sort of, it doesn't matter that you can understand what they were saying, because you just felt the energy and the electricity in the room, sort of thing. And you found yourself laughing at the jokes because everybody else was laughing. It's a little bit like when a child laughs at a joke. They don't understand the joke, but they just laugh along anyway, sort of thing. And it was like that because it's just infectious, isn't it? When he says something in sort of French and, the mannerisms are great, sort of thing, and it's clowning. I think particularly Dominic, well, I think they both are really. They're clowns that do wonderful technical magic in that kind of environment that you never see, around a table, little raked sort of seating of maybe only 30 people max. So you're all looking down on the table, like then they don't need to or never will use cameras. I don't think they're even mic'd. It's downstairs in this little basement, and that was probably one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, and is still a venue that is. I don't know how much Dominic Duvivier works at the moment, but like it's still a venue that is there, and I would highly recommend anyone try and go to, because it will be one of the greatest sort of magical experiences that you can have really in the world, I think.
Tiny little caveat. Again, it's like books. We actually love magic and we go and watch it all the time, you know, and I live in London, so I go and watch everything that's on here. You know, in Edinburgh, we go and watch other shows. So we have seen so much. But Doc Eaton's... Eaton or Eason? Eaton. Doc Eason?
Yeah.
Say both, and I'm sure Corey will...
Doc Eason.
We'll cut it nicely for you.
Doc Eason's bar...
Elton.
Doc Eason's bar magic set that we saw when we went to the Magic Castle is up there with some of the best things I've ever said. And I know there's a bit of a name drop there because I said the Magic Castle, and I know you shouldn't name drop. Do you know who told me not to name drop, Corey? Robert De Niro.
Wow, fair.
So there's a few. There's a few. One more. Charlie Capers Cups and Balls made me cry once because it was so good.
I mean, Jan Frisk is another one that... were you at that convention, Corey? You're probably too young, aren't you? But when we
had this discussion on the last episode, I think with Jack Rhodes, because he'd mentioned Jan and his Cups and Balls routine, and I'd said not many people have actually said that, and I think it is because most people will have seen it now in video format as opposed to in live format, so they might not necessarily get the same sort of...
I mean, the thing that was so incredible...
my goodness.
Was so incredible about it was he was just in the competition. You know, it was like the FISM sort of heats, so to speak, in the UK, and you know, it's a place where anyone can come and perform. So, you know, the standard is all over the place, sort of thing, and there was just murmurs around the place, because if you go to a convention and people are booked, you kind of know who those people are. But there were just murmurs around the place that people were like, oh my God, did you see that guy in the competition, sort of thing?
He's just got a ball. He's just got one red ball.
It's just a ball on the court.
It's just a red ball.
No music, you know. And
he doesn't say a word.
He doesn't
say a word.
He didn't even introduce himself. And it was like...
He throws it away. He throws it away, and it's back there.
And then, obviously, he won. So then he did it in the... or maybe... I think they probably always would have been like the winner gets to perform on the sort of gala show. But he then did it in the gala show in the Winter Gardens on like the Sunday night. And it was just like, wow, we're watching something brilliant, but right at the beginning, you know, like going to watch that massive band play for 20 people, you know, even though it sounds silly because you're in a massive theatre, but it was like no one knew who Jan Frisk was. Yeah. He just came out of nowhere with this act that was just beautiful, you know.
Yeah, it's stunning. And the level of perfection, even at the start, is just ridiculous. Obviously, over the years, it's developed even more, but my goodness, it was just stunning from start to finish, and every intricate detail was so meticulously worked and thought out. And yeah, I don't think we've had anything to the level of dexterity of that in the past 10 years or so. Not that I can think of that comes to mind.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. But those are some of the performances we've enjoyed.
Perfect. What a lovely quick fire answer. Okay. I fear to ask this question. Who are your influences in magic? Let's
We've
take
done
these
them all.
individually. I mean,
We've done them all.
covered it.
We've done them all. We've covered it. Yeah.
Penn and Teller, Lance Burton for me personally, Wayne Dobson for both of us, but for our characters, we were always kind of like, Abel is going to be more of the sort of Wayne Dobson bit. You know, any of those, and the sort of the comedy parts is always going to be him. I'm going to be more like Lance Burton, Channing Pollock, who obviously Lance Burton wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Channing Pollock, you know. But yeah, I think we've done them all, haven't we? Really.
And you've not got a lot of battery left.
There we go. This one, I think, might also take us down a rabbit hole. And it is, what is your magic industry gripe? Is there anything that you think doesn't belong in the industry, or anything that you think is overdone, or just generally irks you?
I'll try and do this.
Mr. Abel.
I'll try and do this really quickly. We have spoken. It's something missing. That's my gripe. We're missing one thing. I think we've spoken about Edinburgh Fringe, and you know how all these magicians have been influenced by the Ellusionists. I think at the minute, magic could arguably be the best it's ever been, and we have the best product going. If I said to you, you need to book 20 magicians back to back, and they all need to be completely different, we could all do it. And we could do it back and forth, where Corey, Kane, and me, we all have to do a bill of 20 magicians, but we can't repeat any of, and they all have to be different to each other. And we could do it because there's so much variety, so much creativity, so much uniqueness in magic at the moment. The one thing we are missing is an advocate to get that in front of more people's eyes, because in London this year, we've got the Magician's Table, which is running, and I heard a rumor when that started that it was going to be a short stint for a few months. Well, it's been going for over a year, and it's doing really well, and people want to watch it. So there is a demand amongst the public for that. Assy Wind and Stephen Frayne and Penn and Teller have all come and done seasons in London over the last year. There's so many shows in Edinburgh, magic shows, that proves there is a hot demand for it, right? So why is there not a weekly live magic show on Netflix? Because we have got the product. We have it. We've got the product here. The WWE wrestling is something I'm a fan of. It's something that is completely alien to other people. Netflix have given those people like $50 million for the rights to their shows, and they're on live on Netflix every week, and people are watching it. And it's not just Netflix, Amazon Prime or whatever. We need an advocate, and it probably needs to be someone who isn't in the industry, who can sit in front of the people who program these streaming services and go, this is the product. Because imagine if you're down the pub and you go, this Sunday at 2:00 in the afternoon, live on Netflix is the World Championships of Magic. And you know that on that is Jan Frisch and Ava Bow and Kane and Abel and Dave Annick, and it's hosted by, Now You See Me, Now You Don't is the new movie. That's something amazing, by the way. What the Magic Circle did is having all the magicians host the premieres of Now You See Me, Now You Don't. I think that's the coolest thing I've ever seen the Magic Circle do. What was it? 40 magicians introducing these premieres to people. Coolest thing I've seen in a long time. So imagine if you have this show. I think it would be watched. I think it would be streamed. I think it would help magicians and magic go to the next level. Because at the minute, honestly, the reason WWE wrestling is on Netflix is because people are so committed to furthering that industry beyond their own ego. one of the people within WWE that no one will have heard of or know about, a guy called William Regal, who's from Britain, in fact. He had a little career in the ring, but he has done more backstage to revolutionize the wrestling world. We need some advocates. We need some people that can go, this is our product. Here it is. Take it to the next level. And it isn't me. And it probably isn't you, because it needs to be someone.
Responsibility.
Yeah, it needs to be someone who can sit in front of a room and go, this is why it's important. And that's, again, another reason why, so the reason I brought up Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Well, imagine if these World Championships of Magic is on Netflix at the weekend. Well, what if Woody Harrelson is presenting it? Or what if it's Justin Willman, who we know Netflix like, and Isla Fisher, who's in the movie? You've got that celebrity angle hosting it, and we go and we see an act, and then at the end of the act, Penn and Teller are there, kind of in their Fool Us role. What did you think of this act? Well, they were phenomenal. I can't see a reason why they're not going to win this. You know, and what if one week it's close up? What if one week it's stage, and so on and so forth? We've got the product as a Magic community, but it isn't anywhere. So that's all we're missing. That's my gripe. We need a little advocate. Could you be our little advocate? Are you listening? The little advocate?
Yeah, if you're listening, please do get in contact with Kane and Abel. They'd like to propose a business idea.
So can you still hear me, Corey? I've had a microphone change so that I've plugged my phone in, because we got down to 2%, guys. I know, which is not much of an advert for a Samsung Galaxy 24. But I think I agree with almost everything that my brother said. But I mean, he says that he's not the advocate, he's not the person, but he's come up with an idea there. But have you emailed Netflix? Have you done anything progressive about perhaps getting this on TV?
No, because I'm not the person. I don't think I don't have the production company. I haven't got a production company behind me. I haven't got any experience in TV. Do you know what? We'll do it. We'll do a cold call email after this to Netflix. Let's see what happens. So
my gripe isn't, well, to be honest, my biggest gripe with the Magic industry is
it's me, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You're not following up on ideas.
The one thing that causes me more, like, that insults me more than anything in the Magic industry, it is my brother. 100%. And hey, that's no news to anyone of the three of us here. You know, Corey, you worked very closely with us during Edinburgh. And I'm not even going to tell you what I like about him, but you know, there's a reason we do a show together, you know. But I guess kind of the reason I asked whether he, you know, I knew that he hadn't sent anything to Netflix, but the reason I ask is because I think a lot of people have gripes and issues with the Magic industry, but they're not that bothered enough to do anything about it. And I think maybe that could be my gripe. You know, people say there's not enough shows, or there's not enough environments, or there's not enough this, or there's not enough that, but they're not actually doing anything about it. One of the things that I think maybe more support in the Magic community. I think it's got a lot better. But I can remember when we were in London, before we sort of went up to Edinburgh really and started doing stuff, we ran a monthly night in London called the Beautiful Magicians Club, with which we originally started with Paul DeBeck and Magic Sam Hurst, and me and my brother. And the idea was and
Missy.
No, because Missy wasn't there at the very beginning, you know, but Missy did. I of course was going to mention Missy, but the originally it was the four of us, because we spoke about it at Blackpool, you know, about this idea of having, and Missy definitely wasn't at this Blackpool, and we spoke about the idea of having a, you know, like a private members club, like a beautiful magicians club, where only beautiful people were allowed in. You know, that was kind of the tongue-in-cheek sort of idea. Sam then met Missy, who, won't mind me telling you, is a stripper, or was a stripper, really, but does like angle grinding, and she does a fan dance and like burlesque, you know, but she did used to work in strip clubs, you know, she's a stripper. She's perfectly happy to be known as a stripper. So then Missy came sort of on board, and we created these shows together, and it created this other great dynamic, because to start with, we would have Missy doing her act, and then some magic, and probably like a variety act on as well, like a comedian or a musician, something completely different. And then Missy would book other sort of burlesque acts and things like this. And it was a great show, and it was on every month in London, and no other magicians came to it ever, you know, apart from people that were very close personal friends of us. And I guess you know, if there's a magic show on in my town or even nearby, you know, I would just go to it. And I think a lot of people, and they particularly don't support people that we haven't heard of. You know, my brother's idea for this next Netflix show, yes, we could come up with the idea of who should be on it, but you know, let's say there's 6 acts on that show. One of those acts, one of the best acts that could be on that show, nobody here knows about. And I think there's not enough of people sort of actively seeking out those acts. And, you know, me and my brother, we're not particularly well known, you know, but we're known within certain circles because we work in certain circles. But there's probably people better than anyone out there that nobody's heard of. And it's because people aren't seeking them out. People aren't going to the Beautiful Magicians Club just to see who's on. You know, people aren't just going to random shows on a whole. So I think my biggest gripe with the magic community is that there's not enough support and there's not enough risk taking. You know, like Jack Rhodes, whose show I saw at Blackpool, and I think was one of the most phenomenal shows I've seen. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And my brother wasn't at Blackpool, and you really should try and go. And he's also, you know, I've met him very, very briefly. I don't know him really at all, but he comes across as a lovely guy. No one knew who Jack Rhodes was before he went on, you know, Britain's Got Talent, really. You know, and he was putting himself out there. You know, he had a YouTube sort of account, you know, that was out there, you know, so he was there to be found. And you know, everything obviously fell into place for Jack going on Britain's Got Talent, which it doesn't for everyone. You know, me and my brother have been in the process of that show, but we've, you know, never actually got into the auditioning thing. But someone like Jack could have just, he might have given it 6 more months. Britain's Got Talent didn't work, and he would have gone back to his normal job that he had before. Yeah. And it would have been an absolute, like, crying shame, you know, that someone that's created such a wonderful act could have just completely disappeared and never been seen. And there's a lot more people like that. And I think the magic community is not doing enough to find those people. You know, we've mentioned Blackpool, which is a great convention, you know, and we'll be there unless we get sort of a lucrative offer for work. They're only booking people we know. You know, like if I went to Blackpool and there was someone and they went, "Who's that?" No one knows about them. I would go, "Well, let's go see them. Let's give it a go." And people might be like, "Oh, well, it might be shit." Who cares? Well, it probably isn't shit because it's been booked by, you know, Russ wouldn't book anyone that wasn't good, you know, but, you know, and I'm not sort of saying that Russ doesn't do a wonderful job at booking Blackpool, you know, and Russ is someone else that, you know, we know. And you know, I really like Russ, but I think generally, you know, I'm not like pointing names at anybody, you know, whether it be podcast creators or Because I understand, Corey, you know, people won't tune into your podcast unless you have like a big name like Kane and Abel on it, you know. But I think my biggest gripe is we can all be doing more to, you know, if you put a show on, book a local magician to sort of help out backstage, or to do your warm up for you, or to do close up in your lobby. You know, that's things we can all be doing, you know. And there's a lot of magicians that owe their careers or part of their careers to certain people just doing that, you know, like Elliot Bibby, for example. You know, one of the first things he did was with Chris Dugdale, you know, and that was just Chris Dugdale, who again is someone that we had on our podcast years ago. We don't know Chris that well, but we know him, you know, and he needed someone to, he might not have even needed someone, you know, but he gave an opportunity to someone to work backstage for him.
Totally.
You know, and then that opens the doors, doesn't it? So, yeah, perhaps that's my biggest gripe.
Perfect. That's not something I've ever really thought about. But in thinking about it further, I do feel like the magic community is very, I think, harsh on other performers as well. Certainly, there's a lot of looking down on other performers, and they're not necessarily there to give them the support that they need to make them better at what they're doing. It's just, oh, you're not particularly great, and then they're just sort of shunned and left, which could be the difference between them not doing magic and them taking it and running wild with it, like Jack has.
I think the magic world and the magic community, like absolutely anything else, you know, compare it to the Football Association. It is doing everything right. It is doing absolutely everything right, and it is doing countless unbelievable things, but it can never do enough. And there's always going to be, certainly when, you know, the question is, what's your gripe? You know, and it's like, well, actually, if I really, really thought about it, here's this amazing thing that's doing everything right, wonderful, wonderful. But here is something that's missing, you know? So I don't, you know, I wouldn't ever want it to be like Kane and Abel chastise everybody else, you know? I think
there's
from
the clip
this
right there, that's the social media clip.
I think from this like 4.5 hour podcast so far, it's probably come across how much we love magic and we love other magicians, and we think, you know, there's so much good going on. You know, my answer to gripe is we're doing everything wonderful. We've got this product. There's just no one to advocate it. You know, Kane's answer is, you know, there is all this amazing stuff going, but there's always going to be a little hole, you know. There's always going to be a little hole in any industry, I think. And I think the only way it grows or it sustains is to go to look at it with as a counsel of perfection. You know, I used to be a journalist, is what I did as my other job. And my editor, if I wrote an article, he would go, "This is wonderful. It's on the website. It's doing well. You've asked these questions, boom, boom, boom. But counsel of perfection, how could this be better?" And that's it.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up our flow fire question segment. Musket fire, reloading every chamber individually. No, that was an incredible quick fire segment with some very thought-provoking answers. So thank you so much for those. Just a quick interruption before we get into the next question. Obviously, with this podcast comes a ton of recommendations from guests of either books or tricks, and logically, I turn to MAGICBOX. Not only do they usually have exactly what I need, but I can get it the next day. Plus, Graham and the team really know their magic, so if I have any questions or queries about a product, they're ready to answer over the phone or email. And as a bonus for you listeners at home, you can also grab 10% off with the code PATCT. Just head to magicbox.uk.com and use the code at the checkout. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Now back to the episode. Having worked across the theatre, fringe, corporate and cruise markets, which has taught you the most about what you guys do, and what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned across those?
So the corporate market is a market that we've basically decided we don't really want to be a huge part of. And I think that is because most people are just booking a magician. And we made the decision that we wanted to be Kane and Abel. We wanted them to book Kane and Abel as opposed to a magician to do whatever. We still do corporate work, but I think that's what we learned from the corporate world. Cruise, the cruise industry, you learn to be mainstream, or you won't get booked. Like we've mentioned that we were anarchic and violent and what have you, and we like tricks with knives and things like that. But you can't do it on a cruise ship, So you could turn up and go, oh, but they've booked me, so I'm going to do my thing. Well, you won't get rebooked, sort of thing, And we've got a beautiful knife through arm routine, which I think most people would be okay with on a cruise ship, but some people wouldn't. And that's what you realize from doing the cruise industry straight away, is that you have to be Mr. Saturday Night. You have to be commercial. You have to be mainstream. Yes, you can do some dark parts of magic, but you've got to guide them into that area slowly. You've got to come out and do socks first. And then, but probably the Fringe has taught us the most, I would say, out of all of those. And perhaps, brother, do you want to talk about the Fringe?
Well, what I'd say on the Fringe is what it taught us is you need to be able to explain to somebody on the street what your show is very, very quickly to get them into the room. You need to understand that people will walk into your room to watch your show and they might be watching 6 or 7 other shows a day. So you have to be different. And we addressed that earlier with tricks. So you have to be different, you have to be unique, and you have to be memorable. You also have to have a really clear idea of what you are and what your show is and what people are going to come in and experience and leave with. And you also have to be as polished as possible. The first year we did Edinburgh, we controlled all the sound from a watch. We've realized now that actually we have to invest in a technician to make the run professional.
A young member of the magic community, perhaps.
Yeah, to make it professional. So, we learn all that in Edinburgh, and all the other cool things that we've done, the cruise gigs, the corporate ones that we do still do, which is when someone said, we want Kane and Abel to do this for us. That all of that, all the knowledge, all the know-how has all come out of Edinburgh. I say to people that if I meet someone from Edinburgh, everything good in our career came out of Edinburgh. You go up there, you do your show 27 times in a row. If you go up there with a good show that you've done for 10 years solidly, at the end of that run, it'll be a great show. If you go up there with a brand new show that you've never done for anyone, parts of it will work and parts of it will not work, and you will come out knowing which work and which don't work. And I think that's the big benefit of Edinburgh is you get to do the same show every day, 27 days. And some years we've gone into an Edinburgh show and we've done our touring material with three new tricks in it, and 2 of them end up being really good and are new bits that we have, and 1 is fine, absolutely fine. But we learned during that run that actually it hasn't got the legs to be a really, really, really great part of the Kane and Abel show. So it goes.
There's nowhere else you can get that kind of runtime and that kind of experience, especially in such a short span of time. Like you mentioned before, the street stuff, and like the Magic Camp, for example. I think they're both great ways for people to get into the industry, to go into these ways, because there's not really any way of getting stage time without just doing these kinds of things. Because it's not like you can just hop on stage and have a full theatre without having ever done it before. So these are perfect ways to, 1, get that time, get that opportunity, and 2, to really get the repetition and the hours in that it needs to become what it is at the end.
Yeah, it's the only place like it. I could say we could say we're going to do our show 27 days in a row in Walthamstow. There isn't enough people there to watch it, That is the beauty of Edinburgh. It's an open access arts festival, and thousands of people are there to watch something they've never seen before.
Obviously, one of the main differences between what you guys do and what a lot of other people at the Fringe do is you guys do the free Fringe as opposed to the paid Fringe. How does that differ for anybody that's looking to potentially venture down the same path? How has that opened opportunities for you that you wouldn't necessarily have got on the paid Fringe? And what would you recommend, obviously, being the difference between both?
I think it's financially a much bigger risk to do the paid Fringe, for sure. So, and we kind of, we invest our earnings all throughout the year. And if we didn't do that, we could probably do the paid Fringe and take a bigger risk. But the free Fringe only really exists and works at Edinburgh. So it's the only real opportunity to do it. So we do a lot of other paid sort of shows at theatres and other fringes. We do, Brighton Fringe most years. And that will work the same way that the paid Fringe works at Edinburgh, that you'll get a split of the tickets and you're having a bit of a financial risk, but you might only have a financial risk for 2 weekends.
The fact that there's not 3,000 other shows happening at the same time.
Exactly. That there's still a lot of shows, and Durham is obviously another one that we've done for the last few years. And the first year we did Durham, we were the only magic act there. Now there's other magic acts there, so we're constantly looking at other sort of fringes and other ways throughout the year to invest our money. So for us to go up to Durham and to put on a show will cost X amount of money. And we will look at our year and go, okay, let's risk that money there and see if it works, And now we have Durham and Brighton are 2 examples of places where we know that we can go and work and we will usually make a bit of cash, which isn't what it's all about, but we're in the business. We're professionals. When I was a chef, we perhaps could risk more money, but now it's our earnings. We're making a living from it. So for that reason is why I perhaps would recommend the free Fringe. The free Fringe, for people that don't know, it isn't 100% free, but you can make a lot of money there. All right. So, but you have to be good at a lot of things. So basically it's free for the audience to get in and you ask them for a donation to leave. Now, this works in Edinburgh because they might have been to watch a paid show earlier on in the day. This wouldn't work at Durham, for example, although is there a small free Fringe thing at Durham? I don't know. But
some of them might be free, but
it might work, but it doesn't work as well because, other sort of, when we do Brighton, people will go to watch one show on a Saturday night. When people come up to Edinburgh, they might watch 6 shows that day, So when they come to our show at 2:30 in the afternoon, they might have already seen something at 12:30, and they might have seen something at 8 o'clock the night before and 6 o'clock the night and before that. So you come in with a very sort of honest agreement that if they've seen a show before and paid X amount of money for it, and they've enjoyed our show more, give us at least the same, maybe more money if you like. And generally people will. So when you do the free Fringe, you have to be good, because if you're not good, you won't get paid. So you either have to be young enough when we started that your audience will let you get away with a little bit more. We were cheeky chappies. We were a little bit slapdash and a little bit sort of anarchic. And it was fine because we were in our sort of early 20s. So people would allow that because that's what they were buying into. They were buying into coming to see these cool young guys do magic, and it might be a bit edgy. Now, when people come to our show in Edinburgh, they're coming to see a professional act because we're 2 men in our 30s that have a little bit of social media is a bigger thing now, that people will look at you on social media and they'll go, oh, they're working cruise ships. Oh, they're working there. Okay, these guys are professional magicians. So they expect a professional show when they come to see you. whether it's advertised as free or not. Most people understand that they're going to pay something at the end of the show. If you're good, you'll earn some good money. The other thing that you have to be proud enough to do is to ask for the money. You know, you have to put on a show that you're proud to do, and you can't be sort of shy about saying, "Oh, give me some money now." Like, you have to put on a show that you're then happy to ask people to pay for, you know. And you don't ask them, you sort of tell them, you say, "Well, we know that this show is worth what it is." So you have to, and particularly when we started being sort of having a little bit of a street performer background, helped, because we were kind of still blagging it a little bit in the early days. You know, we were doing a show that was good, but if we look back on it now, you know, there were some sort of, you know, moments in it. But we were, you know, we were telling the audience sort of why they should pay for it, sort of thing. Now we don't really have to do as much of a hat speech or a bucket speech, as it's known in the trade, because the show does the talking for us, really. Yeah.
Just
but
more of a gentle reminder.
It for sure. It's, you know, and we break the ice very early. You know, we mention it very, very early. You know, that's the other thing for anyone that's going up to do the paid fringe or have done the paid fringe and struggled to perhaps make money or get what they feel the show is worth, is break the ice as early as possible. You know, let just a little joke, you know, that you're going to ask for the money at some point. And then, you know, we always do it before your finale, or maybe even one step before your finale. Don't do the big finale and then ask for the money. You know, tell them that, you know, this is what the show's worth, and bang, here's another thing.
Yeah.
Our finale at Edinburgh is a pain in the ass to get up to Edinburgh.
Tell me about it. Was it you guys that got it up to Edinburgh, or was it some other muppets that agreed to it before actually trying to fit it in their car?
Well, that's the thing. It's the type of thing that you've just got to get up there somehow, you know. And without that finale, you know, our hats would have been down. But we get to a point of the show where we're like, if this was the end of the show, you might pay this, you know. Now here's the finale. And everyone watching that finale is usually going to then maybe increase their payment. They're certainly not going to pay any less after seeing the finale.
Our finales always have been, and I think we've cracked it now, is if our show is pretty much, we call it, it's a stand-up comedy magic show. The finale is a big over-the-top Las Vegas illusion. And what that shows an audience who've come to a free show is that you're multifaceted. And if they were thinking I'd pay a $5 for this, we like to think after the finale, they're up to a $10. And if they were going to pay a $10, we like to think they'd go up to $20 after the finale. And we mentioned that they might feel that way in the show. So if you want to go up to do the free fringe because you want to perform your show, that's really cool. But unfortunately, and we've seen enough people come up to Edinburgh for the first time, it's so hard not to compare yourself to everybody else there. So you want your room to be as full as possible, otherwise you might feel bad. And you want to be bringing in similar hats to other people, otherwise you might feel bad. That's just how it is. It's so hard during that month not to compare yourself to everybody else. So those are some of the ways, you know, that, you know, you have to hammer home the money, and you have to have parts of your show that's going to make people pay a little bit more, and you have to know how to sell it on the street. You've got to know how to sell it on the street to get the people in. You've got to do a really good show to keep them in, because they might walk out to watch another show. And you've got to have the material and the balls to tell people what the material is worth, so that at the end of that month, you've got enough money to make you feel good about going up there and doing it.
So it creates different sort of issues that doing the paid fringe doesn't.
Yeah.
Doing the paid fringe is a much more financial risk. You're somewhat also then, you're putting yourself in among, we are in direct competition with the other free fringe magicians. Whilst if you do a paid fringe, you're now in direct competition with the other paid fringe magicians. People might come up and watch a couple from each. I mean, in some ways, we are in competition with everyone, because we want people to come to our show having been to a paid show and to enjoy our show more, which is something that you don't. And that point of breaking the show and asking for the money is something that we only ever do at Edinburgh. We only ever have to do it once a year, So the first two shows of the sort of run, it can be a little bit eggy, because we're like, oh, no one wants to break their show at that point and ask for money, really. So there's different pluses and different negatives to doing both. And we've been talking to a guy who I'm sure won't mind us name dropping, who isn't a magician, who is a juggler called John Udry.
Robert De Niro, is it?
It's not Robert De Niro. He's a juggler called John Udry, who predominantly works on cruise ships and has done since he was in his 20s, really. And he said to us, I want to go to the fringe, but I don't know anything about it. And I said, well, why do you want to go? And he was like, I don't know if I should do the paid fringe or the free fringe. And I was like, why do you want to go? What's important to you about going? Is making money important to you? Is not losing money important to you? Is having people in your room important to you? Would you rather have 100 random strangers enjoying themselves and paying money, or would you rather have 6 people, but one of them might be a reviewer? Or, back in the day, you were hoping that TV people would be there, but there's no magic on TV, is there anymore? I don't think that really even happens. Getting spotted up there is becoming less and less likely. I think all the spotting is done before the fringe even happens. That they've started printing the 20 best fringe shows before the fringe even starts now. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of of what it's like up there. But yeah,
the fringe is a crazy machine that I can imagine for you guys, even after all these years, is still ever changing and throwing spanners in the works as to what's happening. So
we always talk about, are we going to go? We probably will go next year, but we haven't 100% made that decision. It's always kind of the first conversation we have in the new year. Is what are we going to do this year? Are we going to go to Edinburgh? Are we going to do this? How much money have we got to play with this year? Where shall we play with it? Shall we buy an inflatable bear? That'll be the conversation that we'll have in January.
Can I leave you two to wrap up? Is that okay?
Certainly.
Yeah, because Kane's got this covered, and she's been crying ever since I came. I've got to go do a bit of parenting.
Not a problem at all. Now that we have dropped Abel, I feel like this question's going to be significantly more one-sided and might not be entirely truthful. But how do you guys share the workload outside of performing?
It's actually quite an easy question to
It's all you. That guy does nothing.
No, well, we have a very clear division of labour. So most of the technical magical work I take care of on and off stage. Not all on stage, but most of it on and off stage. I look after all the props. So, most of the props. Most of the props are in my house. They all used to be in my house until we started having to fly for work more. So now here's another thing that I've learned from the cruise ship industry is that your show has to be in hand luggage. If you turn up and you've lost your bag, you're going on. Now certain people might have enough sort of clout that they can say, I'm not going on, and it'll be okay. Most people, you can still lose all your work at the drop of a hat, and we're very aware of that. Pick your battles. Yes, there are some battles to be fought, but if it's in your contract that you're going on, if your bag gets lost, take your stuff in your hand luggage. So when we fly, for example, I always wear something that I would wear on stage. Maybe not like my first choice thing, but what I might wear to do a close-up gig, or something a little bit more casual, but something that I would happily go on and perform in. I once saw a vocal quartet on stage on a cruise ship. 3 of them in black tie, 1 of them in shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops. I kid you not. And
oh my goodness.
He wasn't that much like. I think the boys probably could have lent him something better than that. And I think they probably went, oh, I don't even know what the guy's name was, but they probably went, oh, Darren's lost his bag, so we can't go on tonight, hoping to get the night off.
Yeah.
And, they go, well, Darren's going to have to go on. So I think he probably dressed how he'd travelled, perhaps to make a point, thinking that they wouldn't make him go on stage, but they did.
They did.
So there is another story. A good friend of ours, a comedian called John Ryan, who wears jeans and a t-shirt to perform in anyway. He once had his luggage lost, and he was probably wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but he just decided to make the whole thing about it. He's a great improviser. So he walks on stage in a full chef's costume that he borrowed from one of the crew members. And it's just like, oh, I've lost my bag sort of thing. And then probably gets half an hour out of being dressed like a chef and having lost his bag. So then everybody comes to his second show thinking, what's he going to be wearing? Sort of thing. And I think he was like a sort of engineer. So he had like a jumpsuit on or something like that. But the division of labour. So now that we travel, we have 2 45 minutes in hand luggage. So my brother has a hand luggage bag full of props, which he doesn't really open, and he's like, that's the stuff. I have almost everything else. So there's an element of, if we've had gigs at land, I would have unpacked and repacked, but all that stuff I have. My brother pretty much just has a 45-minute cruise show. And that's pretty much what he's got. There will occasionally be times when things get mixed around and I have to sort of text him and go, have you got the remote for this? True story. Have you heard this one?
No.
So after Edinburgh, there's a little remote button that he uses, and he has to press the button. There is a way around it that I press the button, but it's better that he presses the button. So, and he does a lot of costume changes. Anyone that hasn't seen our act, my brother does a lot of costume changes. So him having a little button on his whereabouts, I was concerned about, because I'm like, it's going to end up in a change bag. So I was like, should we sew it? Should we sew it in somewhere? And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah. So he sewed it in somewhere. So then our first gig after Edinburgh, we're joining a ship and we're doing the same routine. So I texted him being like, have you got the button for the thing? And he was like, yes, I have the button. I was like, great. And he's like, it has been through the washing machine.
Oh, no.
And he's like, do you think it'll work? I was like, probably not. It didn't work. Turns out little buttons don't like going through the washing machine. So props, I'm the props guy. Okay. I'm the props guy. And, also perhaps coming up with a lot of the routines and the magical things. I'm the guy. And then for on stage, I might go, here's a trick, and my brother might go, here's a premise, here's an idea, here's a story, here's a joke, and then we will bring it together at some point and we'll just rehearse it, usually in a neutral space. We've tried rehearsing in each of our houses. We live a long way. We live about 3.5 hours away from each other. So sometimes we'll rehearse things on the internet, on Zoom or something like that. But predominantly we'll be like, okay, here's an opportunity for us to rehearse a thing together. We usually do it on cruise ships. We'll usually be like, if we're away for a week or 2 weeks, we'll always usually have an idea, and I'll be like, I'm going to bring this new thing, and we'll spend one day working on it together. And then it might go into the show. Sometimes we put things on stage that are pretty raw and let them develop on stage. Less so now, more than we used to, but we still do. You can still work a lot out on stage with your audience than you can doing it on your own, for our act anyway. Some acts I know for sure you've just got to practice it on your own. And then off stage, my brother does a lot more, like responding to emails, the communication of this thing happening today. He's done all of that. He just went 1 p.m. and I went, okay, I'll be there, and then I'm like, what's it on? Google Meets. Okay, what's that? So he's more of the technical person. So he also looks after all the music, all the any screens that we have. He's got a Mac. I don't have a Mac.
Ronnie.
He's got
Our good friend.
He's got our good friend Ronnie McDonald. Yeah. Responding to emails, sending off what are those things called that you have to do to get money?
Contracts,
invoices, all of that, all of this sort of stuff. I find boring. I don't like sitting down at a computer. He did it as part of his sort of job, so I guess he's more into it. I find it terribly boring. I would rather spend 2 hours walking around shops trying to find the right confetti. That's how I spend my time. So I guess that's it. He does most of the admin.
So you do the fun stuff and he does the boring stuff, is what I'm getting as the gist from this.
Most people would see it like that. Some people's idea of fun is different to ours, Corey. Some people's idea of boring things is different. It's.
I say that collecting data on the podcast.
Yeah.
So perfect. We are going to move into one of our. I always say this is one of our newer segments, but it's been in the podcast for 10+ episodes now. So we're going to move into our annotated Erdnase section, in which we're going to look at one of your performances, and then we'll break it down afterwards. Obviously, not divulging methods or anything like that. We'll just discuss quickly how it sort of came about and how it progressed to what it is today. So I'm going to switch over to our podcast cam, and we'll have a look at this clip. I think one of the really interesting things that we didn't get to see there, but I'll link the clip below, is you hand out the bulb at the end, signed for the spectator to take home, which is a lovely little piece, because that's such a fun curiosity item for them then to walk away with. How many times have people dropped those, or is that not something that you've had happen thus far?
No one has ever dropped it after we've given them the bulb.
Jeez.
Someone has dropped it as it. No one has ever dropped it when it's come on in their hands, and this is a routine we've done a lot. The only time, and the interesting thing about this clip is that was a very sort of early version of this routine, but it's pretty much the same. The idea was a mirror image, so you're looking into the mirror and you're seeing the same thing, which is purposely why my brother's back is towards the audience, so that you almost want to imagine that they are him. We usually do it on slightly larger stages as well, so that we're further apart, and now we're at a bit of an angle, so that you can still kind of see both of our faces at the same time, and you can kind of see a bit more of what we're doing. But because this was during COVID, although we could get someone up on stage at this point, we certainly couldn't touch them. Okay. So usually and the basic premise of the plot of the act, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, is that we're a mirror image. We're one person. You're looking into a mirror. You think you're looking back at yourself. This thing happens, and then we both have a light bulb in our pocket. Everything is still the same at this point, and then I look over and I've got a lamp, and my brother, there's no lamp in that place. So that's where the sort of reality is broken, or whether we come back into reality, whichever way you want to look at it. There should be a lamp there. You're looking at the reflection of a lamp, but there isn't a lamp in the real world. So the audience member becomes a lamp. So, looking around, I need a lamp. You'll do. And now there will be a sort of gentle hand on the wrist and a mime for them to be into a lamp position. Okay. In the actual clip that we watched, my brother couldn't even do that. You couldn't even touch a wrist. So it took a little bit of time for her to work out that she was the lamp. Okay. Because we don't say, well, the whole thing's done silently to start with. Yeah, but we don't say you're going to come up on stage now and you're going to be a lamp. So occasionally, but the music is designed that it doesn't matter if that bit takes a little bit of time. But the only moment that we've had of someone dropping the bulb on stage and it breaking happened at that moment where my brother put the bulb into their hand as they were the lamp, and he then instructed them to move their foot. And this was a child, so they were young, maybe sort of 6 or 7. So it was a little bit too much sort of information. They've come up on stage for the first time. They're like, okay, I'm a lamp. Yep, I get that. Bulb goes in hand. I understand this. And then their foot becomes the floor switch, basically. So he likes to move the foot into that position so that he can then actually just tap their foot and the bulb comes on. And we now actually also do it that I turn the bulb on before the person comes up on stage. So that first moment of the bulb going into their hand and the foot and the thing coming on, that they come on separately, and it's a little bit stronger, which is something that we've sort of discovered over the years of doing it. But at the moment that he instructed this boy to move his foot, he completely forgets that he's holding a light bulb and he drops it. Smack. Game over. There's nowhere back you can come from there. And And that was at Edinburgh. That was at Edinburgh directly after the bottle speech. So the moment of the show that really, where we've just gone, this is what the show's worth, you know? And then that next trick needs to be strong. It needs to be something, and it's for sure, it's not the strongest piece of magic. It's not the most baffling piece of magic, but that was never what we were setting out. You know, it's something that people say is their favorite part of the show because it's completely different to anything else that we do. And when we came up with it, a lot of the time, there's a famous quote from Penn and Teller, which is that they presume that the audience know how all the tricks are done. And if you presume that the audience knows how all the tricks are done, it still has to be entertaining or relevant. So we do presume that the audience know how all the tricks are done. And up until the bit where they leave the stage with the light bulb, I think most people think they know how it's done, you know, but the clincher of the routine is that this light bulb that's come on and off in their hand, we sign and they walk back to their seat with it. And I think that's the moment. And it's quite unusual in magic because we've already had this so-called magical moment. We've had this fantasy moment. We've had a light bulb coming on and off, seemingly at our own will in somebody's hand. And they have then actually become, it's the same narrative of us during the show. It's that me and my brother are connected. And then we've given that moment to somebody else. So they've come up on stage and they are now connected with this lamp. And when the lamp's turned off over there, the bulb goes off in their hand. When it's turned on, it comes on. So it's, you know, it's an interesting moment in that way for them. And that's a magical moment. But I think the bit when people actually think, oh, how is that done? Is when they walk back to the seat with the bulb, which is kind of what you want from magic. You want people to talk about it afterwards. You don't want people to just be like, oh, how was that done? You want people to be like, oh, hang on. But
it makes the routine so much bigger than it is. I think that's why effects in which the spectator is given an impossible object or a souvenir or something that happened within that routine, they then have so much more than just their words to prove the memory that they have. They also have this item that then has a story with it. And that moment that was living there at that time is no longer then just a memory for them. That's a memory that's shared with everybody else as they explain that story and relive it time and time again.
Yeah. And I mean, this particular, I've met people who still have magicians' cards in their wallet, like signed cards. And they've gone, oh, I saw a magician once and they've still got the souvenir. But I've met people since that have been like, oh, we saw you at Edinburgh 2 years ago, or we saw you on this ship, and I was the lamp. You know, that's how the audience feel. They feel like they have become a lamp. Yeah. And they'll go, I've still got the light bulb. You know, and I was like, did it ever come on? And they're like, no. You know, because in their eyes, it might just turn on and off at random moments.
That's again another lovely little line that you guys had at the end. It's like a bit of comedic relief to sort of bring the tension back down in the room. Is you say, obviously, don't go home and plug this in and flick it on and off at night, because otherwise that one will do the same and it's very annoying for us. It's such a funny little piece to add at the end. And as I say, it eases the routine off.
It eases the routine off. It's a little joke, but it is also just a little sort of reminder to the audience of what's happened.
Connectedness,
you know, of okay, you know, and when we do this piece now, we predominantly only really do it in big theatres, you know, and we'll use all of our budget on haze, you know, or low fog actually, which is I say my brother deals with most of the sort of technical side of the show. When we you know, if we're having our tech rehearsal in a theatre, I will be the person that sort of talks to the stagehand and goes, we need to plug this in here, and we need a table there, and can you bring it off at that point and on it here, and we need these mics, and we'll have one there in the wings. And my brother will go through the running order of the tracks with the sound guy, and and the lighting guy and what have you. And my brother has a terrible habit of asking for haze during this routine. And what we really want is low fog. And we sometimes work on ships when you do your show 3 times a night, back to back. So we did the first one, and we both sit down at the chairs and we look at each other. And at that point, it should be hazy. We're both like, it's quite easy to mirror each other's image at that point because we're both thinking the same thing. Where the fuck's the head? So then we just get up and carry on and do the whole routine, and the show goes great. And then we come up and the one thing that we used to have, which prevented us from arguing, and we do argue, we do fall out, but we always used to say that we would never talk about a show directly after it. We would always wait until the morning of. Unless it's something really, really important, like, life, or, like I could have died because you did that, I'll usually make a couple of notes, and then if I still think it's relevant in the morning, we'll have a little bit of chat about it. And during Edinburgh, that's how we work. But when you start working on cruise ships, you have to do your show 3 times in a row. So you don't have that luxury. You have to talk about it straight away. So you then do open up the possibility that you can have a disagreement between a show, and you've got 45 minutes to reset everything.
Figure it out,
yeah. So, but we've managed to sort of not have any sort of public blaring rows in that situation so far. But we both came off, and I went, did you ask him for low fog? And he went, yeah, I did. I was like, sort of thing. So then he goes, I'll go up and check with him. And I was like, oh, okay, sort of thing. And he goes off and he comes back and he said he gave us some. And I was like, I didn't notice it. And he was like, he said he's going to give us a bit more for this show. And I was like, oh, great. So then second show, we sit down at the chairs. Where the fuck's the low fog? Nothing happened again. What we don't know is we've got haze above us. Haze is high, low fog is low. For anyone that's not, that doesn't use, effects on stage. Haze is in the air, low fog is low. So this poor technician is pumping more haze than he's legally allowed to into the top of the stage, but we've got nothing on the stage. So we're like, where is it, sort of thing. So then after the second show, I went up and talked to him, and I was like, because he was like, I was giving you loads. And I was like, Andy, have you given us, where's the low fog? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, need low fog for Lampy. And he was like, oh, your brother said you want haze. I was like, hey. So my brother has been, giving this poor technician a hard time between shows, going, I can't believe it.
Giving it his all.
I'll go and have a word, sort of thing. And it turns out he was asking for the wrong thing.
These things that you learn over time just by them happening, I guess.
Yeah.
So how did the actual premise of the routine come about? Obviously, you being twins plays into this perfectly. So was there something that inspired this routine of the whole mirroring thing that you'd seen beforehand? Or was it just an idea that you initially had and then this trick seemed to fit it perfectly? Did it start with the trick or did it start with the concept?
It started with the trick. No, it started with the idea. The trick came last. And I think someone else might have suggested a mirror thing, because we are mirror twins, so people have seen us mention it on stage, and it is now kind of the setup to that routine is that we say we're mirror twins, and we're going to show you something now that reflects that. Which isn't the funniest of line. It gets a titter or a laugh or a groan. But it's important in the setup to the routine, because we need people to know that we're mirror twins. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I think we mentioned it on stage for another piece. And a friend that had come to the show was like, oh, I thought you were going to do like a a sort of mirrory figure,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, which is something you see a lot in sort of film and TV and what have you. There isn't one particular sort of reference point that we looked at as to what we would use. We just kind of decided, I don't know if we needed the chairs for another. I think I liked the idea of setting the scene. So I wanted the stage to look big for this thing. So we always were going to go off and walk on with chairs. And I think actually we probably started by practicing at home, just sitting on chairs and sort of leaning forward and scratching our heads and, playing with our ears and stuff like that. So we already had the idea of the prop. And then we just needed the sort of trick to fall into place. And I then sort of, then the idea of the light bulb coming on and off came. Yeah. And then it meant that we could get a nice lamp, and we were like, okay, we've actually set a sort of scene here, and that lamp packs down, screws up, and goes into hand luggage. So, that is a big segment of one of our 45-minute shows, and all it is 2 light bulbs. And, well, the lamp we were actually using, it does screw up and pack down and goes into hold luggage. Yeah. But then what we have, which we've never had to use, is I've just got the connector and the wire on a plug. Yes. Just in case, and I'll wrap it around a microphone stand. So I'm ready to go. I already know what to do in that situation, as opposed to being like, oh, luggage hasn't come, we can't do that bit. Literally the whole show fits into hand luggage, apart from the big illusion that we spoke about before. Yeah. But we have another finale that does. So yeah, the trick was the last thing that came. But then it also sets the scene, just makes it seem like this great big, makes it seem like an illusion, Yeah. We were requested to do illusions, like the cruise industry for a long time, they were just illusionists. And a lot of sort of bookers still kind of want to see illusionists. They still want to see big things. So one of the first bits of feedback we had when we first did a ship was that it was too small. They wanted to put us in the headliner's theatre, the big theatre. We did our show in the lounge, and they were like, it's perfect for the lounge, but the show needs to be big. So you then basically have to create a show too big for your environment so that they'll go, this needs to be in the theatre. And there's no money difference between being in the theatre and being in the lounge, but you can do a better show in the theatre for sure. We can anyway. If you're the type of sort of magician that can turn up with a little suitcase, pop it on a stool, and do 45 minutes, in that kind of environment, which we can do, but we enjoy being in theatres more. So yeah, that was the one thing that we did in the next show. We did that, and Paval's Walking Knot, and which is another trick that looks massive, but it's just a piece of rope. Again, you tie it between 2 microphone stands, it covers the whole stage. They feel like they're watching a big piece of stage magic, but they're watching a rope trick. So when we have those 2 moments in the show, all of a sudden it seems like we're filling the stage. We're big stage magicians.
I'd never thought about the idea of just making things look bigger to make it feel bigger. That's a really interesting concept. It perfectly segues us on to how you adapt what you guys do, because magic's very innately a single person thing. So how do you take routines and ideas and adapt them to play to 2 performers, whilst both simultaneously playing to your own individual strengths and also balancing, obviously, the amount of time that each of you are doing certain things? Because it's easy enough to go, okay, this is a sleight of hand routine, therefore it's yours. You step forward, you take your moment. How do you find a balance, and how do you adapt ideas accordingly?
It's difficult for sure. It has its one big advantage that, I mean, we don't do a lot of, we create a lot of stuff ourselves, like we create this big routine with, and I know loads of magicians that could make a light bulb turn on and off, but they don't have any reason to do it, and, we've got this, we're very much kind of like, there's a lot of thieves in the magic world, that's no big sort of hot gossip. So when we create routines, we've had people nick stuff that we've done before. We've had comedians nick jokes, and it's always going to happen. People are going to nick your stuff, particularly when you sort of become in the street business. Nothing's sacred in the street industry, really. Some people almost sort of view it that, well, if they're doing it and they're putting it out there, I can have it. I've had people come up to me after a show and go, "Oh, I like that line you said about that. I'm going to do that." And I'm like, "Are you?"
Please don't.
Why didn't you just write another joke? Because it wasn't that great. It was a good joke, but I'm not on Live at the Apollo.
Yeah.
Write your own joke. It's not that difficult. So we try to come up with things that people can't steal. Okay. And they can't steal them because only we can do them. Which is why a lot of our stuff is about us being twins. And then also we'll have things made. Another one of our sort of go-to sort of popular routines is our quick change routine that we do, which is a card trick. All right. And everyone does card tricks. And we came up with the idea of, well, what card trick can we do that no one else can? Well, we've got two people. And we've got a card. Are we going to have a card selected? Yes, maybe. So we have the card selected. What should we do with this card? Well, I'm here. I've got the cards. You're stood over there doing nothing. So what should we do with you? I tell you what, why don't we turn you into the card, as the big reveal? So card gets lost or forgotten, something happens to the card. And now the idea is, the plot is, we're going to turn my brother into the card. So automatically we've got something that no one else can do unless they're like that. So it becomes a quick change piece. And the other reason no one can do it is that the costume was purposely made. But I drew a very crass picture of what I wanted, and I sent it to a lady that makes wrestlers' costumes. And I went, "I'm a magician. I'm doing this thing. Can you make this?" And she went, "Oh, I think I know what you want." She sent me back a very lovely drawing that was, a lot better than mine, saying, "Is this kind of the thing you want?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of it." This was, I think, 2 weeks before Edinburgh, and we decided it was going to be in our show. We were rehearsing everything up to the reveal. Clothes were coming off, nothing underneath. And she messaged me back and she was like, "Yeah, I can get it to you by this date." And I was like, and this was once Edinburgh started. And I was like, "Is there any chance you can get it any sooner?" And she was like, "The soonest I can get it is this date, but you'll have to pay extra." I was like, "Fine." And it got posted to Edinburgh. So we hadn't seen the costume until we got to Edinburgh. And we had no idea it would fit. And I think he did kind of lie about his measurements because he's a little modest. And it came and it arrived, and it's absolutely sort of fantastic. And you can't buy it. It doesn't exist, It's the only one in the world. So we're the only people that can do that trick, really. And it wasn't cheap. So it was just one of those ones that we were like, okay, we're willing to invest this into this moment of the show, and then we'll go and do it at Edinburgh, and hopefully people like it, And luckily people really like it, you know, and it's another really, really strong moment of our show, which again is just a card trick, but it plays big, you know, because you've got a person that is physically changing in front of you, which is kind of what you imagine when you go to a magic show, isn't it, really?
Yeah. When you're coming up with tricks and routines and things like that, is it fairly even as to who's coming up with the premises and things like that? Or do you find that one of you is more inclined to concept and one's more inclined to techniques?
It really does vary, you know. It's for sure I'm more inclined to techniques, and you know, I will probably get further down the road on my own before suggesting anything to my brother.
Yeah.
My brother is a bit of a dreamer, so he will just suggest the thing. Yeah. And it might be a great idea, and then I might go, what's the method? And he'll go, I don't know. And then I'll have to go off and find the method. That's a lot of the time how it works. Or sometimes he'll say something and I'll straight away go, oh, well, we could use this. Yeah. So I will usually have done a lot more thought into the whole thing before even suggesting it, you know. So I got, is it Lex Scopin or there's a book on quick change, like the only book on quick change, which I can remember buying just because it was the only book on quick change. I wasn't interested in quick change really, but I can remember seeing again on Magic Week this advert for the first book on quick change to be released in 600 years or something ridiculous like that, you know. And I thought, well, I should have that, you know, I should have that book. So I bought it and read it, and originally thought, you know, there's some color changing ties and stuff in that book. And I thought I could do that. I could make a color changing tie. And we used to have a color changing tie in another routine that was very good. And then luckily the book's on the shelf, you know. Did we mention on air or off air about secondhand magic?
I think it was off air.
If it was off air. So secondhand magic is obviously a place there magicians can go to buy secondhand magic. And I had a friend, I look at it out of interest. My main reason to go on it is to see what people are selling that was released a month before, because then you know not to buy it, basically. You're like, okay, everyone's selling that, I won't buy it. Yeah. It's a good bit of market research. But I'm not a hoarder by any sort of stretch of the imagination, but I just would never sell anything because you never know when it's going to be useful. And, you know, to read a book once and then sell it, or to, you know, like there's so many things that I found in books in particular that if I just sold the book, you would never find. And that was the thing. We might have just stopped with the idea of doing a quick change routine if I didn't have the book, because the rest of the costume we had made by a seamstress, a lady that makes costumes, and with no magic background whatsoever. And I took her the book, you know, and I was like, you know, we're in a professional environment, you're creating the things, this is the book, this is what we want to try and create. And she was on a similar sort of schedule to the other part of the costume being made. And I can remember sort of not pressurizing her as to being done, but to be like, you know, when can we expect it, sort of thing. And I think I went in and we had to make some alterations to it. And she was like, oh, is Tuesday okay? And Tuesday was okay. And I was like, yeah, Tuesday's absolutely fine. And she was like, is Tuesday okay? Because I've got quite another big job on, sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, sort of thing. She's like, I'm making all the costumes for 6. And this was like the premiere of 6. Like no one even knew what it was, you know. And she was making all the costumes for this big West End musical. And then also making our
Hello, Kane and Abel.
wowzers. Yeah. At the same time, and I was like, we're not that important,
You know what? Thursday should be fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Tuesday.
You make sure you've got 6 nails.
Thursday's good.
Those costumes have been on the TV. I think it was on Red Nose Day that year.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, did I answer that question really?
I think you answered it pretty darn well. Let's see what your brother thinks. Perfect.
It's
A lovely little placeholder image, bless him. We got one final segment before we wrap this up, and that is our question deck segment. This is 52 random questions. You don't know what the question is going to be. I certainly don't know what the question is going to be. This is a completely normal deck. There's no short cards. This is not 116 cards thick. There's no rough and smooth. So this could genuinely be anything. And these are meticulously shuffled throughout the episodes. But we're going to quickly dribble these. You say stop. We find out what the question is, and we'll go from there. So, anytime you want.
Stop.
This is your question. What is the most profound lesson magic has taught you? This doesn't necessarily have to be a magic-related lesson. This could be a life lesson that you've taken from magic.
It's a good question. A profound thing that magic has taught me.
Don't work with family.
Don't work with family. I mean, if you are going to be in a double act,
pick someone you like.
Pick someone you have to do it with, or we're good friends with Griffin and Jones, who are like another great double act. Who I can remember. I think they probably had done Edinburgh. Maybe bang on the same time of us, or they might have done a year before us, or what have you. But I can remember that when I got up to Edinburgh, I looked at who all the other magicians were, and I went to all of the shows. It's a bit like what I was saying before about just supporting random people. I very easily could have just gone to watch Pete Furman, but I thought I should go watch Griffin and Jones first. Because they're more relatable, perhaps. It's another double act. But I don't think I'd seen Griffin and Jones yet, but they were obviously on my list of things to do. Yeah. And we did a cabaret, which is another thing to highly recommend if you're a performer up in Edinburgh, is to do as many spots as possible. And me and my brother and Ava Bow have now actually started doing a mixed bill variety show up there where we have guests on every day. It's a little bit like sort of Shooting Stars. We play silly games with the audience. Me and my brother, the 2 team captains. Ava Bow tries to be the host, tries to keep everything under control. Yeah. And we'll have a special guest on every day who is a variety performer. We don't usually like to have magicians because we're magicians. But we had a great guy who I've completely forgotten his name, which is absolutely terrible. You might be able to tell me, who was from Lisbon. And he was hanging outside the liquid rooms. And I think I was flyering or putting up a poster or something like that. And he came up to me and he was like, "Oh, you Kane from Kane and Abel?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I came to your show yesterday. I absolutely loved it," sort of thing. And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much for saying." And he was like, "I'm a magician." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "Have you got a show up here?" And he was like, "Yeah, and he had a show. And he was like, "I'm from Portugal." And I was like, "All right, great." And he was like, I don't know whether he asked whether he knew about our mixed bill, or I might have just gone, "You know what? We're doing it." I think he was like, "I'm getting numbers in, but not great," sort of thing. And I'd never seen him perform. All I knew is that he had made the effort to come from Lisbon to do the Fringe. And I was like, "Do you want to come on our mixed bill show?" And he was like, yeah, love it. Yeah. What do I have to do? And I was like, you can do anything you want. Like, it doesn't have to be magic. You can do absolutely anything you want. And then I had to, now, in the past, we have taken a few risks on booking people for this show, and they haven't all paid off. All right. So when I turned up to the show, and I didn't book him for that night, I think I booked him for a few nights down the road. When I turned up to do the show that night, and I said to Ava, I've booked someone for Thursday or whatever. And she was like, who was he? What did he do? Is he any good? I was like, don't know. Doesn't matter. He's coming on. You know, I was like, he's come all the way from Lisbon. We should be supporting these people, you know. If people hadn't given us those opportunities back in the day, we wouldn't be where we were, you know. So Ava kind of sort of begrudgingly let me have him on the show. And he was brilliant, you know. But I don't even know how I got onto him. I'm really waffling because we are 5 hours in now, aren't we? But do mixed bills, yeah. So we had done Magic Far Away Cabaret, which is a cabaret show in the Voodoo Rooms, and we came off stage, and Griffin and Jones were at the door flyering for their late night cabaret, the Lock-In, in the same venue in half an hour's time.
Yeah.
And this was the first time we'd ever met them. And Steve said to me, we're a guest down. Do you want to do a slot? And I was like, oh, well, I guess so. But I was a bit sort of naive. I was like, 2 all-male double act magic? I was like, are we going to, sort of clash sort of thing? And they were like, no, it'll be fun. So we did our silk to egg routine, which at the time had a trouser drop in it. Doesn't anymore. And they were just the loveliest guys. You know, they bought us a drink, and they were just no rivalry between the two of us. You know, I think we were very much on their ground. I'm pretty sure they'd done it a year before us. Then we've turned up as this other magic double act, and they were like, come on our show, you know. And then some people from that show would have come to our show the next day, sort of thing. As it happened, Griffin and Jones also had a trouser drop in their act at that point. But they did it anyway, you know, and made a little bit of a joke about it that to be a successful magic double act, you have to have a trouser drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think, as you say, we've been on this for this is our 14 day 3. So it has been a while, but everything that you guys have shared today has been incredibly helpful, not only to me and hopefully to those listening as well. You shared an abundance of knowledge through the stuff that you've done for the Fringe, cruise, corporate, things like that. So what are your plans for the future? Is there anything you can tease us with? Obviously, you mentioned before that Fringe is sort of normally a New Year decision. So we might see you for the Fringe, but is there anything that is locked in that you can tell us about for the future of Kane and Abel?
Our plan for next year is to just keep on going, really. Keep on doing what we're doing. We're actively trying to be a little bit more involved in the magic community, which isn't something that we've, been away from, but it is, we've had other focuses, so we did the IBM convention for the first time recently, just after Edinburgh. So we'd like to do some more things like that. We've got a lecture that we're going to try take to some places. We're going to keep on doing the same sort of stuff, fringes, festivals, hopefully cruises. We're in talks with a different liner, but I can't really say anything about that. And maybe a little bit more at home. Maybe a bit more touring. We're kind of trying to sort of think, do we want to go on a little tour of small venues, or do we want to put all, you could either say, okay, here's our budget. How many venues can we do? X amount, or do we just take all that budget and put it into one place? And we've, my brother's had a baby very recently, so we're now kind of more in the realm of
smack bang in the middle of the fringe to add.
Smack in the middle of the fringe. Yeah, not ideal. But we're perhaps now more leaning into the take all the money and put it into one place, so that we're not away from home as much. So that we it's not the best time for Kane and Abel to go out on tour, but it is a good time for Kane and Abel to turn up into a town, do a bigger theatre, put a bit more into the promo budget, and do stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, there's not a huge amount. We're just going to keep on doing what we're doing. Maybe do a few more sort of personal things. I've started a YouTube channel which isn't magic related at all. So
I'm going to have it linked below because it is an incredibly fun watch. So.
Yeah, so I'm doing that, which is anyone that's interested in food and football will love. Anyone that's interested just in food will love as well. But it's quite a sort of niche idea of a YouTube channel when I create a dish every week for Southampton, who is our football team, and whoever they play. I choose a player that used to play for both teams, and then I create a dish in their honour. So it's pretty niche, but it's basically a cooking show, and it gives me the opportunity to cook things from all over the world. So I recorded one yesterday, which was in sort of reference to a Polish player. So it's kind of Polish cuisine, and then the next one will be Irish. And yeah, it's fun because, I've done some Caribbean cooking and all sorts really. And it's taking up a little bit too much of my time, but the difficult thing is that we sometimes we play 3 times in a week. So we're going away for 2 weeks on a cruise, and during that time we're going to play 6 times. Yeah. So I need to record 6 videos before we go away. Yeah.
The joys of the beast that is content creation.
You just have to keep planning it, don't you? Really, and keep doing it. And I mean,
hats off to the podcast. Yeah.
Well,
even for the fringe, that was 4 or 5 weeks of my time that I had to then have everything scheduled for. Obviously, I didn't have my PC, my setup while I was there, so all of the social media stuff needed pre-prepped. All of the clips for socials needed done. All of the recordings, the edits. For both platforms, I say both platforms, like all 5 platforms that this goes out on.
Yeah.
Plus an abundance of other ones, but they automatically. Yeah, it's stuff you don't really think about, and then you go, oh shit.
Yeah, and we're playing the long game, aren't we? Really,
yeah.
Which is kind of actually something we've always kind of done with our magic. Is sort of we've always thought we're kind of playing the long game, But keep going at it. Keep putting yourself in different environments. Things will come, sort of thing. Yeah.
What a beautiful way to wrap up the episode. It's been absolutely incredible, as I mentioned before. Thank you so much for giving your time. Obviously, pass on my thanks to your brother as well, who had to dash away to look after the young one. Where can our listeners find you if they're looking to find out more about Kane and Abel, if they're looking to find out more about what you guys are doing in the future, if a tour comes about, where's the best place to keep up to date with what you guys are doing?
Probably Instagram. Instagram is the one that we kind of focus on, and most of our it's linked to our Facebooks, but we're not super responsive on Facebook. So Instagram is the best place to get hold of us, see what we're doing, keep up with what we're doing. We always, I know we've mentioned it a lot on this podcast, but we always sort of send our dates into Magic Week, which is Magic Week was sort of, for people my generation, it was like what you looked forward to on a Saturday morning is, seeing, it was the only place to hear about magic news, to see who'd won the conventions and see what sort of competitions were going on and what conventions were going on, and what shows were going on anywhere. I think it's probably one of the sort of, it's similar to creating a podcast. I don't know if Duncan makes any money from it. I know he has advertising on there, but it's, a sort of thankless task that he's been doing for years and years and years, just because he loves magic and loves the magic community, really. So, yeah, big shout out to Magic Week. And that's another place where you could usually find out where Kane and Abel are.
Perfect. Well, as I say, thank you again so much. If you guys at home have enjoyed this, please let us know what you've taken away from the episode, whether it's in the comments on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. And if you did enjoy it, why not leave a review for the podcast, for the episode? Drop us a comment, leave a review on Apple or Spotify, because apparently nobody does those. And if you've made it this far, well done.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, not even all the guests have made it this far. So.
You've made it longer than Abel, so
yeah.
Very well done. It has been an absolute pleasure, man. And again, thank you for you guys listening at home as well. And if we don't see you beforehand, we'll catch you in the next episode.
Lovely stuff. Nice one, Corey.